Happy Thursday morning, everyone. Hope everybody's had a great start to their day. We are live on Rumble Studio. Good morning. Wifey Tips, thank you for that gift over there. We are live on Rumble Studio. Good morning, Rumble. Live on YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. Live on X. I just checked. We are active on X. Let me pin my comment over here. We are good over there on X. Good morning. We are live on Facebook. That's Facebook.com/Work on Your Game University. My name on YouTube and X is both Dre All Day. Dre All D. DREALLDAY. Dre All Day on X. Dre All Day on YouTube. I got more than one YouTube channel. Just look my name up, which is Dre Baldwin. Facebook.com/Work on Your Game University. We're live on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also Dre All Day. Live on Instagram. Instagram is Dre Baldwin. Somebody got the Dre All Day name. I couldn't get it. And live on TikTok. TikTok is Work on Your Game. Somebody had Dre Baldwin and somebody had Dre All Day. So I couldn't get either one of those over there. Let me see if I can see who has those on Instagram. Let's see. Dre Baldwin. Well, when I look up Dre Baldwin, I'll come up. But I don't have the name Dre Baldwin on here. So this is actually there's a bunch of other people's stuff on here too that posted me from being on their shows, etc. Who's this? All right, anyway, I don't know who this is. How do I get out of here? All right, so I'm just looking up on TikTok to see if anything comes up. I don't know how you even search for a name here on TikTok. As y'all coming in, shout yourselves out. Tell me your locations. I forgot to say that. Tell me your locations as y'all shouting yourself. As you are coming in, shout yourselves out and tell me your locations. All of you over on, here it is, users. As y'all are coming in on TikTok, shout yourselves out. So it does say my Instagram name, Dre Baldwin, but I want to know who has the actual account name on TikTok for Dre Baldwin. I don't even see it. I don't know if anybody has it. Let's see who has Dre All Day. Shout yourselves out. Tell me your locations as you are coming in on TikTok. Tell me your locations on TikTok. Today we're going to talk about our favorite subject, Donald Trump. I mean, who else? What else will we talk about? Of course, we're going to talk about our favorite subject. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. So as you are coming in, shout yourselves out. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's alleged attack on history, his alleged attack on slavery. that Donald Trump say slavery wasn't that bad. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into it. Don't worry. As y'all are coming in, shout yourselves out. Tell me your locations. All right. I'm not seeing who has these account names. So we're good. Rumble, YouTube, X. We are good. Facebook, we're good. LinkedIn, we're good. Instagram, we're good. TikTok, good morning. Tell me your locations as y'all are coming in. Let me turn the fan up. It's hot. All right. So I'm looking on TikTok and shout a couple people out in here. Excuse me. Carrie, go get them. Thanks for the like. And everybody else who's liking live, we already had 1,000 likes. We're good. That's good. TikTok, keep going on the likes, though. Keep going on the likes. We do 100K a day over here. That's the standard. We do 100K a day. Wifey Tips, thank you for the heart early. Marky Man with the first comment. Good morning. Checking in from Grand View, Idaho. Shout out to Idaho. I've actually been there a couple times. Shout out to Idaho. Shout out your locations as y'all are coming in. Nat, Real Sweetness. Good morning to you. Thank you for being here. As y'all coming in, shout yourselves out. Carol Ann Collins, Newburgh, New York. Nikki from Connecticut. Carrie, go get them from South Carolina. Trucker J is in Minnesota, covering the country. Trucker J, good morning. Gabrielle, the last, said, Jesus is the way. All right, good morning to you. Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit is in the building. Steve-O, 1800, Dallas, Texas. Shout out to Dallas. Beres checking in from LA. Is that Louisiana or Los Angeles? Good morning to you either way. Wifey Tips from Arizona, arid Arizona. CJ said, I used to watch you in 2011. You would always practice your moves. Much love. Yes. I still practice my moves, just different moves now. Now we doing moves in a different way. So, CJ, appreciate you. What are you doing now? You still playing basketball or what? Ron Johnson from Lima, Ohio. Good morning. Don Johnson from Lima, Ohio. So we got Don Johnson and Ron Johnson, both from Lima, Ohio. Imagine the odds. Back-to-back comments, too. Irma V from South Texas. Shout out to South Texas. We got Kuya Ben Yashara from Manson, North Carolina in the building. Good morning. Karen Bishop X. Good morning. Checking in from Alabama. Shout out to Alabama. Tell me your locations, y'all. Shout out a couple more people and we get into the topic. Ashton Brown from Charlotte, North Carolina. Ashley from Pennsylvania. Good morning. Mr. Ohio J. And we have Daryl from Cleveland, Ohio. Good morning. So Ohio is represented strongly here today. TikTok Ref 3 from Chesapeake, Virginia. Good morning. AU Hunter, morning from Las Vegas. Shout out to Vegas. Vegas is nice early in the morning before it gets too hot. Shout out to Vegas. Michelle Hall from Holly Ridge, North Carolina. Good morning. Mr. Who is that? Bonafide said I overtrimmed. No, it's probably just a lighting issue what you're looking at. I did not overtrim. Trust me. Avanti from Huntsville, Alabama. Good morning. Michelle Hall, good morning. So the topic here today, we're talking about Donald Trump, allegedly, according to his detractors, of which he has many, very active detractors. They're saying that Donald Trump is pushing back on slavery, pushing back on history, pushing back on a lot of things that are happening, a lot of things that did happen, a lot of things that did happen in the past. Let me see if I can find this quote. We're going to quote this man directly since we're going to talk about it. We're going to quote directly what Donald Trump said, and this is what got a lot of people excited over the last couple of days because he posted on Truth Social. Here's what Donald Trump said on Truth Social, in case y'all don't know about this. And I'm reading it, and somebody highlighted it, but it doesn't matter highlights. I'm just reading exactly what he said. He said this on August 19th at 2:45 in the afternoon, so 2 days ago, Tuesday. He said this: the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of, and he put this in all capital letters, woke, W-O-K-E, and he put it in quotation marks. The Smithsonian is, all caps again, out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen, and I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be, all caps, woke, because, all caps again, woke is broke. We have the, all caps again, this is in quotations, hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including in our museums. Okay, so what Donald Trump seems to be saying here, if I was to paraphrase his thoughts here, is that America is a little bit too woke. And let's get a definition of woke, because people tend to get into arguments about this word woke. I have defined it in the past, but let's get a clear definition so we're all on the same page here. Woke means, this is not the word I'm looking for. This is the wrong definition of woke. All right, here it is. Merriam-Webster says woke. Chiefly, it's U.S. slang. Woke is a slang term, but it is in a dictionary. I'm looking at Merriam-Webster dictionary in case anybody wants to know my reference. Aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. So woke just means to be aware and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues. Now, based on that definition, woke just means you're paying attention to things that are happening in the world, not necessarily that you feel one way or another way. So the definition says is pretty neutral. The way this definition is laid out, this is a pretty neutral way of just looking at things that are happening in the world. However, when the word woke is used, whether you listening to this consider yourself to be woke or not, I think we all colloquially understand how it's used. And the way Donald Trump is using it is the way that it's colloquially used. And colloquial just means what is the common way that people mean when this term is thrown out there? What are they really saying? Even though the definition may conflict a bit with what people are actually meaning when they use the word, how is it normally accepted? And this matters, because in the court of law, this is how judges decide how to interpret laws. So colloquially, the word woke means people who are not only actively attentive to things around racial and social justice, but often people who are pushing for more racial and social justice. That's usually what woke means. Can we agree to that? Can I get a yes or a no in the comments if we agree that's pretty much what it means when somebody says woke? And that can mean a person who is criticizing wokeness by saying, I don't like woke, which is what Donald Trump is doing here. Or it can mean somebody who is claiming wokeness by saying, I am woke and I'm happy to be woke. That's generally what it means. It means somebody who's pushing for, we need more racial justice, we need more social justice. And this is what Donald Trump is in his Truth Social post. What do they call this when you post on Truth Social? Is it called a truth? Is it called a truthism? What do they call that when you do that? I don't use Truth Social. I only see his stuff through X. And then everybody just reposts it. And then, of course, generally they attack it. So all of you agree that's what it means. So President Trump has escalated, according to the way some people want to frame this. He's escalated his criticism of the Smithsonian Institution. He called the museum out of control, as I already read for you. He deems as an excessive focus on the horrors of slavery and negative historical narratives, arguing that visitors don't see things such as I read to you, success, brightness, or the future. Now, that's actually kind of funny that he's saying that a museum, which is really designed to document the past, is not talking about success, brightness, or the future. That if I'm talking to Donald Trump, President Trump, that doesn't quite make any sense. Purpose of a museum is to talk about the past, not the future. But anyway, this is what he said. So I read you what he said. Now, he announced that his attorneys, they're going to review the exhibits, similar to how he targeted universities. I don't know what his attorneys have to do with it, but I guess they got to do this legally. And he's saying that they're going to target museums in DC and national museums the same way that the Trump administration targeted universities and colleges and said, y'all had to stop doing this stuff that we don't like, wokeism. They got to stop doing this stuff. And if you don't stop doing this, then we're going to do something that we're going to give you some punitive punishments for this, i.e. take away your funding, take away your ability to get access to certain things. And he's the president. He has the power to make this happen, especially a president armed with attorneys. And Donald Trump is a guy he's not new to using attorneys when he needs to. So he says there's a 120-day directive. Well, this is what I found out. There's a 120-day directive to remove woke content from these museums and replace that material, not necessarily with the future, which doesn't make any sense because it's a museum. It's supposed to talk about the past, but it's actually going to replace it with unifying and historically accurate messaging. Now, this cites an executive order that Donald Trump signed back in March of this year. It is about restoring truth and sanity to American history. That's actually the title. That's capitalized. Restoring truth and sanity to American history. That's a proper name. That was the name of the executive order. Now, legal experts are noting that the Smithsonian operates independently and it has a board of regents. In other words, like a board of directors who decide what to do and what not to do. This is how the Smithsonian operates, allegedly. And there are civil rights groups accusing the Trump administration of attempting to whitewash history, That's not new. They all been doing that for the last 10 years, accusing him of this, that, and the third. This is the next accusation. He's trying to whitewash history. Historians are warning that this move risks politicizing what should be an independent institution. Now, let me speak just on that point alone. The Smithsonian, being an independent institution, is run by a board of regents. First of all, the Smithsonian is a very well-known museum, probably next to, I don't know, maybe the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York, or the Met Museum, probably the most famous museum in the United States of America. And while it is claiming to be run independently, we all know what it means when people start throwing out the term independent, claiming that they're being run independently, is that maybe they're not connected to a government, maybe they're not connected to a bureaucracy, but it's not that the Smithsonian, let me say it this way, Smithsonian is a group of people making a decision. So how independent is it? And who are these people tied to? Where are these people making their money? Because just running them Smithsonian might not be worth that much money. Are they getting any funds from the government? Do they get any tax breaks from the government? The people who are running it, the board of regents, where do they make their money? Who are they connected to? Who are they taking phone calls from? And I guarantee you there are answers to all of those questions. So claiming that it's run independently just means independent from the government. Doesn't mean that the government doesn't have a say in what happens there, which is why Trump is saying what he's saying. They may not have as much say. Government may not have as much say as Trump may be posing that they have. And Trump tends to do this a lot. He tends to speak more directionally than literally. But at the same time, they probably have a say. So this is going to be an interesting thing, depending on how it develops, if anything even happens. We got to take all this into consideration with the grain of salt thought that we got to remember that Donald Trump will throw things out into the world, get everybody all excited and talking about it, but he may not actually follow through and do it, because just by posting it on social media, he gets everybody talking about it, and that may be enough to get action. Therefore, he doesn't have to do anything. So he's able to actually control people's behaviors by posing threats through social media posts rather than having to actually follow through and do stuff. So of all the things Donald Trump talks about he might do, I'd say about 40% of them he actually does. The other 60%, things change without him having to actually do whatever he said he might do. So this thing with the attorneys and this and that, maybe he'll do it. I'm guessing he probably won't even have to do it, because the changes that he wants are going to happen. They're going to occur even if he doesn't do anything. And that's the power when you can use your words and use platforms like Truth Social or X or whatever he's using to get his points across. So before we get into the points, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year professional athlete, author of several books. I'll tell you how to get a couple of them free later on today. And I run this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. Our job here is to help you command the room. Walk into a space and people move when you move. They follow when you move. They listen when you speak. How do you get that command presence? You get that through your discipline, through your performance, through your execution, and through using strategy and systems so that you know exactly what's happening. You have all your shit together. And because you do, that leads to a certain energy, a certain aura, a certain presence that people can feel, and they can read it off of you. Even if they don't know you, even if they never hear you talk, even if they don't even know your name, they can tell. You can see it and you can feel it in another person. All of you have experienced this and seeing it in other people. I show you how to have this feeling, how to create this feeling in others through yourself, whether you're doing it personally, whether you're doing it in business, whether you're doing it as an entrepreneur, doesn't matter, as an athlete, doesn't matter. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com or the links in my profile. You can learn more about working with me, getting into our programs, and how to make all of this stuff apply in your business, your life, and everywhere else around. Brian Miller on Instagram. Good morning to you. So how we work over here, for those you don't know, I go through the content. I'll take maybe about 25 or so more minutes to go through the content. I'm going to go through the points of this whole story. I'm going to give you my opinions on some of this. I'll give you my theories, and I will share with you the quote unquote facts and information that I found about this. And then after that, we're going to get into the comments, where I will read you all's comments. I will respond to your comments, and you don't have to agree with me in the comments, but you do need, as long as you keep it respectful, do not troll my comments. Do not spam my comments. Don't post the same thing 15 times. I saw it the first time you posted it. And now we have sound effects. I got a soundboard now that we found a couple of days ago. Somebody suggested the sound. Well, I've been thinking about the sounds for a while, but then I realized maybe there's an app on the phone that will have sound. So now we got it. So the most common mistakes people make in the comments, when I get to the comments, I'll go over this again, is a couple of logical fallacies. One of them is a straw man fallacy, where someone restates my point as something that I didn't even say, and then they argue against it. That's a straw man. If you use a straw man, you will hear the following sound. Oh, there's no sound. Wait, let me turn my sound up. Let me do that again. If you use a straw man, you will hear the following sound. Strawberry cheesecake. All right, so if you use a straw man, that's what you're going to hear. Then there's the ad hominem. Ad hominem is someone attacks me personally because you don't like my point. If you do that, you're going to hear this.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
That one's quick, so let me play it again.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
If you use the appeal to ridicule, you use the LOL, LMAO, while you're also using a straw man to try to act like you're making fun of something that I didn't even say. That's the appeal to ridicule. Then you're going to hear this one.
Oh, I like your funny words, Magic Man.
Let me play that again.
Oh, I like your funny words, Magic Man.
And if you actually make a good point, if you make a solid point, because we can't just use a sound for people saying stuff that doesn't make sense. If you make a really good point that I strongly agree with, then you'll hear this. Okay, so now we got those ground rules established. Let's get into the points. The content, then we get to the comments. So the topic again today is Donald Trump. Is he attacking slavery? Is he trying to whitewash history? Generally, my answer is no, he's not. But since anything Donald Trump says or does, people sensationalize it. Why not use it? That's what I'm doing right now. So Donald Trump says, focusing on America's achievements and optimism will rebuild national pride, especially as the company approaches its 250th anniversary. I agree with this, that his frame, what he's saying, without saying it in so many words, is that America, instead of focusing on how terrible our past was, which is what he was noting, how about we focus on maybe some of the positive things in the past, maybe some positive things happening instead of focusing on the negative all the time, and how he is framing wokeness, and he's using it as a pejorative. He's framing wokeness to be people who are too focused on the negativities of the past and the negativities of the present, which you put negatives from the past, negatives in the present together. All you're going to do is create a more negative future. Donald Trump is saying, how about we focus on the positivity of the future rather than the negativity of the future, based on, again, looking at things in the past that were bad and putting a magnifying glass over them, or putting a microscope to them, and always focusing on the negative. Again, I generally agree with this point. I'm saying this even as a black man who has grown up in the United States of America. And I understand the pushback to this. I understand the pushback. I don't agree with the pushback, but I understand it. The pushback is people saying, well, this negative stuff that happened in the past did actually happen. Slavery was bad. There was a lot of people on social media yesterday just saying that. Slavery was indeed bad. Looks like there was a talking point that got sent out by the Democratic National Committee yesterday that said, go and post this, anything that slavery was indeed bad. And so many people were doing it that it made it seem like you'd be a fool to not agree with it. It looked like a coordinated posting on social media to me. By the way, on TikTok, please keep getting the likes up. Please keep tapping the screen, getting the likes up on TikTok so we can get to 100,000 likes every time we do a live here. Get the likes up, tap the screen. So I don't agree with this concept of woke people, and I'm going to speak specifically about black woke people, always talking about the past and the negativities of the past, specifically as it relates to either black people and or women and or people who are LGBTQ, and talking about the past of these people as if it's been so terrible for them, and that's all the focus. They're from these same people who tend to focus on this. I call these people race hustlers for a reason, and I'll explain why I call them race hustlers. Is because their hustle, their business model, is to keep you focused on the negativities of the past based on your race. I'm talking specifically about black people, and usually the race hustlers are black. There are a few white ones like Robin DiAngelo. Most of the time they're black. And their whole business model is to keep you focused on that. And while you're focused on it, that means you got to keep coming back to them so they can tell you what to think about or how to respond to anybody pushing back on you. They can go and argue against other people, and you can cheerlead for them while they go do it. A good example of this is a woman named Amanda Seales. She was just on this YouTube video. You know those videos on YouTube where it's one person versus 20, and they sit in the middle of the room, then the 20 people sit around, and they run up to the chair, and she just rapid fire debates with people. There's a channel called Jubilee. They do this. They do it with a lot of different subjects. Amanda Seales, she used to be known as Amanda Diva. She used to be a singer, but I guess she's now I don't know, what do you call it? Activist, whatever she calls herself. Educator. quote unquote educator, whatever. She just did one of these videos on Jubilee and it went viral. It got like 2 million views in 2 days. I listened to that entire debate, and she is a active race hustler. And I think she's trying to step her race hustling game up, which is making everything about how terrible America was, how terrible America still is. And if you are, her thing was one black radical, because she is staunchly standing on she's not a liberal. And maybe she isn't. I don't care what she calls herself. One black radical against 20 black conservatives. So these are noted black conservatives, not noted, but declared black conservatives debating with her. Y'all should listen to that video or watch that video on YouTube. It's a masterclass in logical fallacies, if nothing else. I'll say that. There's a lot of other things I said. You can look at my X post where I talked about it this morning. But she's a race hustler, and there are many others like her. I'm just pointing her out because it's fresh on my mind. Their whole thing is keeping black people focused on how bad America was, is, and projects to be for you as a black person in America. Now, the question is for race hustlers, why would a person build their whole brand around things being bad in the past, bad now, and going to be bad in the future? Why would anybody want to build a business around that type of negativity? Well, the reason that you do that is because the name of the game in media is if it bleeds, it leads. And if you get people excited, and excitement does not have to be positive. Excitement can be negative. Fear is a form of excitement. If you get people excited in a negative way about something that for which you are the source, they have to keep coming back to you to get more information about that thing that makes them nervous, anxious, or afraid. And when you make people nervous, anxious, or afraid, you will have their attention. And when you have people's attention, you can get their money. That's the reason why I call these people race hustlers, because this is a business for them. It's not just talking. Because just talking on social media is one thing. When your whole business is based around a certain mindset that you keep indoctrinating people with, now it becomes a career. And Amanda Seales, I don't know what she does. I don't know what her professional work actually is. The way she was talking, it sounds like she's an activist. I guess that's her thing. Maybe she has a podcast or a YouTube channel. I'm guessing. I would bet money she probably has both. And this is her thing. And she's probably written a book or two. And if she hasn't, she's about to, about these type of things. The profile of these folks is always the same thing every single time. I'm bringing this up to say that people like her love when people like Donald Trump come out and say the things that he says, because they go use it for content. The same way I'm using him for content, but for a different reason. They go use him for content so that they have something to push back against. Look at this racist person who is upholding white supremacy and trying to hold black people back by telling us that we shouldn't be talking about our history. And their whole argument is we should talk about how terrible the past was, because if you ignore the past, you're deemed to repeat it. If you don't learn from the past, you're deemed to repeat it. And the same thing's going to happen again. The same thing's going to happen in the future. And again, it's a self-perpetuating argument. That's the reason why it's a hustle. It's a beautiful hustle, because every single time somebody knocks down one point, you can just come with another point, and then something else happens, and something else happens. And you always have material to use for this. This is why race hustling is a great business model and a great business to be in if you're that type of person. I'm not the type of person who get into this stuff. I'm not a person who's into victimhood or feeling bad about the past, even if something bad happened in the past. I'm not about rewatching bad movies. I'm a person who is about performance and producing results and owning your situation, even if you're not responsible for your situation. That's just me. So race hustlers don't really like dealing with me, because I'll knock down their nonsense and I can verbally deal with them in a way that they can't talk over me or talk circles around me in a way Amanda Seales was trying to do to a bunch of her counterpoints in this video. Again, y'all should go watch the video. It's on YouTube. It says, I think it's called One Black Radical Against 20 Black Conservatives. Let me pull it up, see if I still have it on in here. It is called, One Black Radical versus 20 Black Conservatives. It got like 2 million views in 2 days. So this thing is going viral. Y'all should go listen to it so y'all can find out what's happening. So Donald Trump provides a perfect foil for these individuals, because Donald Trump is old. He's white. He has been labeled so often that people have agreed that he must be racist. And hold on one second. You want to join me?
No, I want to ask you a question.
All right. What's the question?
I found the tire that belongs to maximum suction.
You found it?
Yeah.
Where was it?
It was on the bed.
It was on the bed?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it now?
I can't find it now.
You can't find it now?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Where is it?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I thought you found it.
It was in bed is in the bed.
Is in the bed, yes.
No, but I don't see it now.
Okay, so maybe you should go find it again.
Okay.
You gonna go find it? Okay. Close the door, please.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so back to where I was. They love using Trump for this purpose. That's why, as I say, Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. He gives for everybody. People who defend him, or those are like the MAGA supporters, staunch conservatives, then people who are neutral about him, even people like me, and then people who attack him, people like the race hustlers. So Donald Trump is a benefit. Everybody benefits from Donald Trump. So as much people talk shit about him, everybody's benefiting from him, especially if you're creating content. So critics argue that sanitizing the brutal history of the past, such as slavery, and I think everybody agrees, black, white, liberal, conservative, independent, Democrat, Republican, whatever, young, old, everybody agrees that slavery was bad. All right, this is not to be debated. Donald Trump didn't say slavery wasn't bad. He just said people keep talking about how bad slavery was in history museums instead of talking about anything from the past that was good. That is a legitimate argument, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So critics say that sanitizing the history of slavery distorts the truth, and it diminishes the educational and emotional weight of museums, turning them into propaganda. I completely disagree with this frame. First of all, the United States of America is what it is today. Still the land of opportunity. Still the place that everybody from everywhere else, if they had a choice of where to go, more people want to come to America than want to come to anywhere else. What does that have to do with the history? The only way America became this type of place is because good things that happened in the past. So over the last 200 plus years, so many good things have happened. Wait, it's 2025. Is that 200 years? Let's just say the last 200 years. Forget it. The last 200 years, 150 years, whatever number of years you want to talk. Great things have been happening in America. Was it all great? Absolutely not. Were there some terrible things that happened? Yes. Have bad things happen to good people? Absolutely. Have good things happen to and for bad people? Absolutely. That's life. But enough good things have been done and stacked on top of each other to the point that they compounded to where America in 2025 is still the place that everyone wants to go. Nobody wants to leave. It's the land of opportunity. We have to actively have a force of people known as ICE, going and finding people who shouldn't be here because they don't have documentation and kicking them out. A lot of other countries don't have that problem of kicking people out who are trying to be here when they're not supposed to be. There are other countries in the world where no one's trying to be there when they ain't supposed to be. People are trying to get out of there and they can't get out. But in America, it ain't a whole bunch of people trying to get out. Why? Because this is still the best place to be. Despite what anybody says about it not being perfect, okay, it's not perfect. And you're still here, right? And you're not trying to leave, right? And you can get on a plane. All right, you got a passport, you can go get one. Nobody's trying to leave. And why does that matter? That matters because something that happened in our past and our history has led to it being good now. We all understand that things don't just pop up out of nowhere. The way that life is in America right now today is not something that just happened yesterday. It's a cumulative result of everything that's happened over the last, we're coming up on 250 years, right? We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, including the negative, including the positive. What Donald Trump is saying here, again, without saying it in so many words, is how about we highlight some of the positives that have made America great? I didn't even mean to say it that way, but made America great. When he said make America great again, we know he didn't make it up, but he borrowed the line. Making America great. America has been great. How do we know? What's the proof that America is great? The proof that America is great is that you are in America and you are not actively trying to leave. That's the proof. That's the only argument I have to give. You're here in America. You're not trying to leave. Despite the negative things you can point out about America, its history, its present, and even what you predict for the future, you're still not trying to leave because there is no better option. So great is relative. Great is relative compared to your options. What are your other options? Name a better option. And if there's a better option, why haven't you taken it? If America's not great. The fact of the matter is it is great, and your presence here and your lack of active attempt to leave here is proof that America is great. That's my argument for America being great. So whenever some black person says, well, tell me, Dre, when was America ever great? Right now, today. It's great right now. That's my argument for it. So some say that Trump trying to take some of this educational, quote unquote, material out of the museum that has emotional weight turns the museum into an arm for propaganda. I say is already an arm for propaganda. A museum is already an arm for propaganda, and I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna explain to you what I mean by that. Now, some may be saying propaganda because Donald Trump is technically in politics, but I say every museum is a tool, a vehicle for propaganda, simply because a museum can't tell you the entire story of any history. It's impossible. There's not enough space in a museum. If a museum had to tell you all the history, the museum would have to be the size of, like, I don't know, the Mall of Americas in Minneapolis or King of Prussia Mall outside of Philadelphia. It would have to be that size in order to tell you all of the story. And even then, it wouldn't be all the story. And even then, there'd be historians that would debate whatever parts of the story got added in and what parts of the story got left out and how the story got told. History, ladies and gentlemen, is literally a story. History is a story. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you had one version of a story, another person had another version of the same story, even though both of you experienced the exact same thing? Everybody has experienced that. The point of me making this point is that just because something is called history does not mean it is, number one, does not mean that it's factual. Number two, does not mean it's completely accurate. And number three, damn sure doesn't mean it's the whole story. It's the part of the story that they wanted to tell. And the people who run the Smithsonian choose which parts of the story they want to tell. Donald Trump is simply saying, I want to tell a different part of the story. Neither one of them is wrong. But Donald Trump has the voice and the reach to make his opinion heard. And that's the reason why we're talking about this. Any type of history is always picked and chosen. What parts of the story do we want to tell here? What parts do we want to leave out? That applies to anyone telling a story. When I tell you my story, if I was to sit here and tell you my story, where I come from, my background, I can't tell you every single detail. We'd be here for 30 hours if I told you the whole story. I tell you the parts that I want you to know about. The parts that are relevant to the audience that I'm talking to is the same thing that a museum does. So the museum says, well, we got to tell these parts of history that are educational and emotional. Okay, maybe they are. Just because you call something educational does not mean it's the whole story. Is this true or not? How many of you went to college and graduated? How many of you, after you went to college, after you got a degree, you went out into the real world and started working and you realized there's a bunch of stuff that you didn't know that didn't get taught to you in college? The answer is everybody. What does that mean? What does that have to do with this? What has to do with it is just because you are quote unquote educated does not mean you have all the information. Those are two different things. Being educated and have all the information are not the same. All the information, first of all, is impossible to have because there's always new information being created. Secondly, just because you are educated and you are indoctrinated with information does not mean you know how to think, doesn't mean you know how to parse data, and it doesn't mean you have a full understanding of anything. The etymology of the word education is to bring out from within. The way education works in America is to input from outside. So the way education works in the United States of America is actually the opposite of what the word actually means. Education in the United States of America, quote unquote, education. Mrs. Amanda Seals in that YouTube video that I just referenced, she more than once, I believe, at least one time she referenced that she has a degree. I believe she said a master's degree, an advanced degree in something that she studied at whatever university she went to. I believe it was an Ivy League school that she referenced. Doesn't matter which one or what she studied. The point was that she brought it up. She brought it up as a shield, as a defense mechanism against her point. So somebody was arguing with her and she said, well, I have a degree in XYZ from XYZ University, as if that's to mean you can't argue against me because I have a degree in this subject. That doesn't mean you know anything. It just means you went to school and you read some textbooks and you sat and you studied a subject. Studying a subject does not mean you have all the information, nor does it mean that your information is infallible, nor does it mean that your positions are unchallengeable. Yet, quote unquote, educated people, often the advanced degree holders. I'm an educated person technically. I have a 4-year college degree, no advanced degree. But many advanced degree holders tend to hold up their education as if that means you can't challenge anything that I say on a subject on which I'm educated, upon which I'm educated. That is a false frame. That's bullshit. As a matter of fact, I would argue that if you are educated on a subject with an advanced degree from a really good school, whatever you consider to be a really good school, that is more reason why you should be open to having your opinions challenged. You should be open to having your positions challenged. And why is this? You should be open to having your positions challenged because if your position is as strong as you say it is, that it can stand up to scrutiny, it can stand up to questioning, and you will be stronger in your position, and you can sharpen your sword, and maybe, just maybe, you might add to your knowledge base by debating with someone who disagrees with you because they may have a point. Maybe they make 10 points, but 2 of those 10 are actually useful, and you can absorb them into your knowledge base. And now you can use that moving forward if you are actually as educated as you say you are. A lot of times when people claim their education as a shield for their arguments or as a shield to not be challenged, what they're really defending is their indoctrination, meaning I've been told these things, I have ingested these things, I have internalized these things, and I don't want anyone to challenge me on these things that I've internalized. Therefore, I'm going to point out that I'm educated so that I hope you stop challenging me. And or if you do continue to challenge me, I'm going to either ignore you or I'm going to set myself up in a way that you can't get to me, i.e. blocking you on social media. As I mentioned to you all, I think I mentioned this earlier this week, I'm blocked on social media by a whole lot of educated, advanced degree holding individuals. Now, why is this? It's because I will challenge their points. I don't attack them personally. Never do I attack them personally. I will challenge their points. And when they see that they can't talk around me, they can't talk over me. And again, this is on X, so it's not like we're having a conversation. But they can't talk around me. They can't talk over me. They can't one-up me with their education. Then they realize, okay, I can't really do anything with this. So let me just get rid of this person so I don't have to engage. And again, this happened many times with highly educated, quote unquote, advanced degree holding individuals because they can't deal with actually being challenged by somebody who they can't talk circles around. And this is the problem that I have with the common race hustler. This is the problem that I have with their frames that they try to use against Donald Trump, because it's all an emotional argument. There's no logic involved in this. Logically, they have a point, but they're not even using that point. What they should say is what I just said, is that they are right, that there are parts of history that should be told. Donald Trump is also right that there are other parts of history that are not being told that should be told as well. But they're trying to make the argument that, well, he's trying to whitewash it. And the only reason they're saying that is Donald Trump's an old white man. They can use that frame. If Barack Obama said it, they couldn't do that. Well, they could, but they wouldn't use it that way if Barack Obama was saying it. They would try to emotionally blackmail Barack Obama by saying, Barack, you're a black man. How are you going to go against putting black history in a museum? Which is why Barack Obama would never bring this up. So they can use it against Donald Trump because of who he is, not because of the strength of their argument or the context of his argument. So this review mirrors past actions against universities. It reinforces executive oversight in federal narratives, allowing policy alignment across institutions. All right, what does all that mean? It means that the federal government does have a say in how these institutions operate. Why? Because these institutions get money from the government. They also often get tax breaks from the government. So if the government threatens their money in any way, i.e. you got to give us more of it or we're going to give you less of it, they have to listen. That's why Donald Trump making this statement mattered. And that's why that coordinated messaging from the DNC went out over the last 48 hours, because they know that he actually does have the power to actually do some of the stuff that he's talking about. And they know it, because if he didn't have the power to actually do it, they wouldn't care. But because he does, they care. And that's why they're trying to get an organic groundswell of the population to push back against what Trump is saying, as if that's going to stop him from doing it. This has been tried, folks. It's 2025. This has been tried. Are y'all not familiar? Where have y'all been asleep the last 10 years? It's been tried. Let's get all the people to say something negative against whatever Donald Trump is allegedly about to do, and that's going to slow him down and stop him. It's been 10 years. Has that worked even once? But I understand. Because people are so emotionally engaged with anything that Donald Trump says, does, or allegedly thinks, they try to fight fire with fire. The problem with this is, and any of you who's done any type of creative problem solving understands that sometimes the solution is not the same as the problem. What that means is, if the problem is Donald Trump gets on social media and says stuff that gets people all stirred up, the solution to him doing that is not for you to try to do the same thing, because you're not going to beat him at that game. He's too good at it. It's kind of like you get in a boxing match with Mike Tyson. You don't want to try to fight Mike's fight. He's going to beat you. You try to fight Floyd Mayweather by fighting like Floyd, you're going to lose. All right, somehow, some way, you got to use a different approach. You can't beat him at this game. He's too good at it. His megaphone's too big. His platform's too large. Elon Musk tried. Elon owns the damn platform. It didn't work when he did it. So how is anybody else going to do it? Historians warn that a dangerous precedent may be set. As soon as they use the word dangerous, I already know that this is some emotional manipulation. All of you pay attention. Whenever you hear people, especially people who seem to be arguing for the minority in any conversation, any subject, female, LGBTQ, black, whatever. Whenever you hear the word dangerous, that means they're about to emotionally manipulate you. They're going to call it dangerous because they're trying to incite fear, anxiety, and stress in the minds of the listener. And they use that word to make it seem like what this person is doing is actually going to tangibly hurt you. What we're talking about here is a museum. Nothing that happens in this museum is going to hurt anybody. But pay attention to these little verbal subtleties that they try to use on you. So historians warn that this sets a dangerous precedent by allowing political pressure to overrule academic and curatorial independence, undermining trust in what museums teach. Okay, I disagree with this point. It's a very clever wording. I say this wording is the kind of stuff that comes out of academic institutions every day. Very cleverly worded. And what you got to do when you're dealing with these is you got to break them down piece by piece. So I already told y'all the piece about the dangerous, quote unquote, dangerous. You calling something dangerous. We're talking about a damn museum. All right, nothing's happening there. All right, it's not life or death. It's a museum. Okay, people go in there, look around, take pictures, and leave. All right, this is not a hospital. All right, this is not the war field. It's a damn museum. So it's not nothing dangerous about this. And then they say historians say it. This is another one y'all got to watch out for. When people reference historians. So a historian said it. That must mean whatever they say about history, you can't challenge. Bullshit. I just told y'all, history is a story. It's literally his story. That's what history is. His story. Break the word down. How many of you have ever had one version of a story that you lived and another person lived the same thing and they got a different version of the same story? All of you have experienced that. Just because one person has one version of a story and you got a different version does not mean yours or theirs is accurate. Probably both of y'all lying. And the real truth is somewhere in between both of your stories. Now, a historian is a person who allegedly studies history. Okay, you study history. Just because you study history does not mean whatever you came up with is true. The same way, if someone goes to school and studies a subject does not mean anything they say about the subject cannot be challenged. You go to school and you study communications. That doesn't mean anything you say about the communications industry can't be challenged. It just means you studied it. That's all it means. And you learned it from textbooks and you got it from your teachers. And a historian, here's the thing about historians, ladies and gentlemen, that all of you should understand. Historian, just being a historian on its surface is not like some entrepreneurial venture, right? A historian is not an entrepreneurial venture. A book author is, a professional speaker is, a consultant is, an influencer is. You can do those independently. And I want you to follow what I'm saying here so you understand what the point that I'm making. You can be an independent book author. You can be an independent consultant, meaning you make your own money, you write your own checks, you set your own prices, and the money goes directly to you. As a historian, that's not the way they make their money. Historians are usually tied to some type of institution, whether that be an academic institution or an educational institution such as a museum, which means what? It means they have bosses. It means they have somebody who can tell them what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say. Now, why does that matter? That matters because as soon as you're taking a check from somebody else, that means the person who's giving you that check can tell you what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, what position to hold, what position to not hold, which means what word do I want to use here? Your independence of thought can be brought into question just because you're accepting the check for no other reason. Just because you're accepting a check from an institution that you don't control and that your name is not on the door, I can question how independent your thoughts actually are because somebody else is telling you what to say and what not to say. I'll give you an example. About a year or so ago, I remember I put this post on Instagram and I was trashing the medical industry in the United States of America, which deserves to be trashed. And I was trashing it and somebody was in the comments and they were kind of just responding to my comment and saying that I was wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm looking at what they're saying. And I'm like, something about what this person's saying just doesn't seem right. It wasn't an objective back and forth. It seemed like this person had a dog in the race. I didn't know who this person was. They didn't even have their, on social media, people don't have their real name and their real face. So I finally asked this person, wait a minute, what do you do for a living? And it turns out it was a male and he worked in the medical industry. He was like a nurse or something like that, a registered nurse, something like that. And he'd been a registered nurse like his whole professional career. And I said to him the same thing that I'll explain to you all is that, well, first of all, you work in the industry. You work for the medical industry. So I just trashed the industry. So if you're going to say anything, you can't come in and co-sign me trashing the industry because that would mean two things. Number one, you might be threatening your own career if somebody finds out that you said that. And number two, you'd be invalidating your own self. Let's say you're 30 years old. You've been working in the industry since you were 21. You would be invalidating the whole 9 years of your professional life by agreeing with what I just said. So you have no choice but to defend the industry that you've dedicated your life to. Now, this does not mean that he was lying. It doesn't mean that he didn't believe what he was saying. Now, I want y'all to understand this. It doesn't mean he didn't believe his defense of the medical industry. Maybe he really does believe the industry is good. Maybe he does. The problem is, because you work there and because you take a check from them, I don't know if you're completely independent in your thoughts. You know I'm independent because nobody pays me. I'm not taking a check from anybody. I don't have a boss. Meaning anything that I tell you is what I actually think. I have no interest to defend here. Again, doesn't mean I'm right. But it does mean I'm telling you what I actually think. Now, you will work as a historian and you work for the Smithsonian. Well, what else are you going to say? You're going to say what the Smithsonian tells you to say. Because if you don't, they're going to fire you. Now, who's going to pay you? How are you going to pay your bills? This is the way that I think anytime I hear somebody making a strong argument on any subject, on any point, especially when they're doing it publicly. I'm looking at them and saying, okay, who's this person? Who is this person? Who do they represent? Who do they work for? Do they have any bosses? Is there anybody who can call them and tell them, don't say that, you can't talk about that, don't bring up that, don't engage with this person? Is there anybody who can tell you what to say and what not to say? If so, then I'm questioning your motives. Again, it does not mean you're lying when you say what you say. Maybe you truly believe it. But if you have that tie, now your credibility comes into question. And it's a problem. There's another reason why these academics block me, because I call them out on their nonsense. Okay, you work at a liberal university. What else are you going to say? You can't say what I say because you get fired if you say what I said. See, if I say what you say, I'd still have my position. If you say what I said, you wouldn't have a job. So who here has more independence, me or you? Who has more freedom to say what they actually believe, me or you? And this is what I say to them. And again, it's the reason why a whole bunch of them block me, because they can't, there's no answer to that question. So historians saying that this is a dangerous precedent is nonsense. Them being a historian also can be brought into question. And it says it overrules academic and curatorial independence. As again, I already explained this. When you're an academic, again, being an academic is not something that you do independently. It's not like being a consultant or being a personal trainer or a physical therapist. You don't do that independently. When you're an academic, what makes you an academic? If I meet you in the elevator and you see me and you say, good morning, sir, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm an academic. What do you immediately assume? What do you immediately assume where I work? Put it in the comments. If you meet me and I tell you and you say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm an academic. Where do I work? Give me an answer. Sean said his point was debating with someone like you. We're not debating. This is not a debate. This is a lecture right now. This is the lecture part. This is the open, one-sided conversation. Then we're going to have the two-sided conversation in a moment. But this is not a debate. So I don't know what you're talking about. If somebody tells you that they're an academic, okay, all of you got the answer. That means I work at a university. Here's the thing with working at a university, folks. And this is the reason why I don't do a lot of speaking gigs at universities, is because there's a whole bunch of people at a university that have to sign off on you being there. Now, what does that mean? That means, first of all, you got to do a good job in the interview process. You got to be very good at going through job interviews to get a job at a university. You got to be very good at it. I'm assuming. I've never tried, but I'm assuming you got to be really good, because you got waves of people you got to impress. And you can't piss off in order to get the job. Is that true? Anybody work at a college or university? Just put cosign in the comments if that's true. I know it's true, but just put cosign anybody who's done it. You got to be really good at going through interviews. The other thing that matters is that you can't say anything that might piss off the wrong person, which means you got to be careful what you do say and what you don't say, which means you come across somebody like me who does not have that problem. We can't have a real discussion because there's certain things you ain't allowed to say, even if you believe them. You understand? Certain things you can't say, even if you believe them, if you work at a university, because you'll get fired from that university. And again, you're a career academic. So if you're not working at a university, who are you? Where you want to go? There's no such thing as an independent academic. I mean, there is, but how many of them are there? To be an academic, I mean, colloquially, what do we mean academic? It means you work at a college. All right, that is a credibility piece. If you say you work at a college, you're respected by most people. If you ain't working there anymore because you said the wrong thing, again, how are you going to have a conversation with somebody like me? You can't. Not a serious one. So this is the issue. So this saying that this person is a academic and curatorial independence. Curatorial independence just means the curators. Curators are the people who choose what goes on display at a museum. That's it. So if y'all saw Ocean's 11, and what was the woman's name? What's the redhead actress's name that played George Clooney's wife in Ocean's 11? I always get these white women mixed up. What was her name? Is it Sandra Bullock? No, it wasn't Sandra Bullock. What's the other woman's name? What's the woman's name who was George Clooney's wife in Ocean's 11? Redhead chick. Somebody give me her name. I'm seeing her face, but I don't know her name. What's that woman's name? She's older now. Julia Roberts. Yes, Julia Roberts. So in Ocean's 11, yes, Tess. Ocean's 11, she was a curator at the museum. So you saw when she came down the steps and Matt Damon and Brad Pitt. Well, Brad Pitt had to hide his face because she knew who he was. But Matt Damon was looking at her. She's a curator at a museum. So she just looks around at the art and stands there all day. Just like Charlotte in Sex and the City. Same thing. So they curate the museum. That's curatorial independence. She doesn't have independence. She got a job. Now, you can't have a job and independence at the same time. All due respect to all employed people listening to this. That's an oxymoron. You can't, because you can't piss off the boss. You'll get fired. That's just how it works. So it undermines trust in what museums teach, which is nonsense. It undermines trust in what museums teach. I disagree. I say that anybody who wants to be informed these days, you have to get your own information. That doesn't mean you can't go look in a museum. Doesn't mean you can't read a book. Doesn't mean you can't watch YouTube. Doesn't mean you can't listen to Amanda Seales if that's who you want to listen to. You listen to Dr. Umar if you want. Where's school at, Dr. Umar? Doesn't mean you can't listen to Candace Owens or Megyn Kelly or Donald Trump or name your name. Whoever you want to listen to. I say get information from a whole bunch of sources that even completely disagree with each other. And then here's the hard part. You got to do some critical thinking and think about what's the actual truth here. Now, I got all this information. All these different people said things. What's the actual truth? That's your job to figure that out. You can't depend on anyone else to tell you what the truth is. Not anymore. You used to be able to. You can't do that anymore. Those days are over. So I just knocked down that whole argument, this whole educational sounding word salad that they threw out there about what historians are arguing. I don't give a damn what a historian says. Now, some Americans feel that museums should boost morale and unity by spotlighting positive milestones instead of dwelling on past injustices. I generally agree with this. If I had to pick a side, I'd rather museums spotlight positive things that have happened or that are happening. If it's a museum, let's just say the past. I'd rather the museum spotlight things that happened, positive things from the past, rather than the negative things from the past. Doesn't mean they can't bring them up, but I say let's 80-20 this. Let's put 80% of the stuff in the museum about positive things and 20% about negative things or bad things or blemishes on the history of a country or a group or a people, et cetera, et cetera. This is how museums used to be. All of this change happened, ladies and gentlemen, over about the last 15 years, especially as woke became a thing, especially as DEI became a thing, especially after the summer of 2020 when we had the Breonna Taylor happen in the spring, George Floyd in the summer, and that whole BLM wave that happened in 2020, even though BLM was out since 2013. And it came out based on a nonsense story that happened with a gentleman by the name of Mike Brown. We're not even going to get into that here today. But all of that has happened over the last 10 to 15 years when this overemphasis, this over-indexing of the negativities of the past got accepted. And now people like Donald Trump and many others are pushing back and saying, let's take it back to where it was. Let's stop focusing on the negative and let's focus on the positive. And some Americans agree with this. A lot of Americans agree with it. I mean, half the country voted for Donald Trump. So others say that true unity only comes from facing ugly truths honestly, and that skipping painful history does not heal history. All it does is erase accountability. This is the basis. This is the foundation of the race hustler's career. What I just said. Let me read it again. This is the foundation of the race hustler right here. Listen closely. True unity only comes from facing ugly truths honestly. And if you skip painful history, you don't heal, you erase accountability. Here are the key terms from that statement that the race hustler's whole career is based on. These terms are here. You're going to hear them use these terms all the time. Unity, truth, honesty, pain, history, accountability. Those 6 words. It's not that these words don't exist. It's not that they're not real. It's not that there is not use for these words. But you usually find these words sprinkled through the language of the race hustler because their whole career is based on you accepting that these things must be brought to the front of the conversation. Race hustler claims to be pursuing unity. That's what the race hustler claims. They're trying to bring everybody together, even though they're not. You look at the outcomes of their behavior. Are they bringing people together? No, they're separating people, but they claim they're trying to bring people together. And they say the reason why, if I'm talking to a race hustler right now, the race hustler will say, well, Dre, the reason why my outcomes are not bringing people together is simply because the people who are not agreeing with me simply don't want to face the ugly truths of history. Have y'all heard anybody say something that sounds like that? You ever heard a race hustler say something that sounds like that? The reason why we can't move forward is because these people over here don't want to face the ugly truths of history. All I'm trying to do is get people to accept the ugly truths of history, and I'm going to keep preaching it until they accept it. And if they don't like it, I'm going to keep saying it. You don't have to like it, and I'm just going to keep saying it anyway. That is the frame of the race hustler. That's their entire career. That's the thesis of their career, is that I got to keep talking about these ugly truths of history. Now, do they honestly believe this? I believe that they do. I mean, if you're going to build a career in race hustling, you better believe it, because otherwise, how are you going to go to sleep at night? Now, the thing is, these ugly truths of history, the reason why they keep front-lining these ugly truths of history is because they set themselves up to win no matter what. If they get everybody to accept the ugly truths of history, then you get white people denouncing their whiteness and saying I had to bow to a black person because of bad things that somebody who looks like me did to somebody who looks like you 200 years ago. All right, that's one outcome that the race hustler gets. The other one is if the white person resists, then you can just label the white person as racist. You label them as a pejoratively MAGA or conservative or far right, and it just puts more fuel into your fire that, hey, black people who agree with me, look at all these racist white people who won't listen to us talking about our history, and they're telling us to just get over it and just move on. No, we're going to keep talking about our history till everybody accepts it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why the race hustler is not technically going to go away. They're just going to have less steam as less people buy into the nonsense. It's not that they're going to stop doing what they're doing. They're just going to have fewer people buying in. 2020, they were on fire. 2021, even into 2022, race hustlers were on fire. You were in the race hustling industry in those years, you probably ate pretty well. Now, hopefully you saved up your money. But this stuff is going to start slowly going away as more and more people wake up to it. Speaking of woke, wake up to it, the wokeness, and they start pushing back against this stuff. So race hustlers also say that you can't skip over history. We can't heal if we don't talk about it. We got to hold everybody accountable. Here's the challenge that I have with this accountability piece that race hustlers like to use when they talk about the past. Accountability. First of all, accountability is about holding to account someone who is responsible for something. Now, if you want to say the United States government, I don't have a problem with that. There is some issue with it that I'll get to in a moment. I don't generally have a problem with saying I'm black and I want to hold the American government responsible for the bad things they did to black people, and there should be accountability for that. I understand your position, and on the surface, I don't have a problem with it. There are problems though. But when it comes to everyday people, me and you, everyday people walking down the street, a white person is not to be held to account for slavery who's alive today because they did not have a slave. They did not do anything to perpetuate slavery. And just because they won't denounce their ancestors based on something that happened in a history book does not make that white person today wrong. Nor does a black person necessarily, there's nuance to this, necessarily can they walk around claiming that somebody, a human, everyday person, I'm not talking to government, but everyday person owes you something simply because your ancestors were slaves and somebody who looks like this white person you just met, they were the owner of those slaves. So that means that white person owes something to you. And no, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. Now, as a black person, if you want to say the government owes something, there's a conversation to be had there. Not a long conversation, but there is a conversation. The United States government, here's my frame on this. When they started enacting all their civil rights, quote unquote, equality measures in the 1960s, mostly under President Lyndon Baines Johnson, that was the reparations. So black people still arguing for reparations. My position on it has always been the same. If you are able to achieve it and the government says we're going to write a check to every black person, I'll give you my address. Give me my damn money. At the same time, I ain't marching with you. At the same time, if I had to bet money whether or not you'll get that money between now and 2050, I would bet against you that you're probably not going to do it. You're probably not going to get the money out of the government. You can try. You can have rallies. You can have speeches. You can do social media content. You can do live streams about it. Are you actually going to get the money? I'd say probably not. That's my bet. But if you want to do it, I'm not trying to stop you. But I'm not doing it with you. That's what I would say to any black folks saying that the government owes money. I believe that the United States government believes that their reparations were paid out through the Civil Rights Act, paid out through the programs that LBJ put in place, paid out through affirmative action, paid out through DEI, and that they slowly paid it out through these governmental programs, not necessarily by writing one check. Now, the argument can be, hey, they wrote a check to these people, you wrote a check to them, you wrote a check to them, you gave money to these groups, you still give money to these groups, how about giving money to us? Is that a legitimate argument? The answer is yes, it is, which is why I said, if you're black and you want to argue for reparations and getting a check, if you're able to do it, I will shake your hand and say, thank you for getting me my money. Here's my address. Make sure they send me my check. I'll take the money. But I'm not going out and arguing for that because I don't think it's going to happen. But it's not that you don't have an argument. Is it a good argument? I say not really. But do you have one? Yes, you do. Okay, so just on the note of reparations, that's on the record. Everybody heard that, right? Okay. Now, Trump's push echoes sentiments from the parts of the country tired of this ideological overreach, which is, again, the last 15 years, often happening in public spaces, and it gives voice to those who prefer celebratory, and he wants to give voice to those who prefer celebratory narratives. This whole ideological overreach, this is what I meant. The last 10 to 15 years, affirmative action was coming up through the 90s, very popular in the 90s, at least when I first heard of it. Then you got DEI over the last 10 to 15 years, and woke going along with woke. These are what is being referred to as ideological overreach. And DEI, Mrs. Amanda Seals in that video, there was a little bit of conversation on DEI, not too much. The argument with DEI is that people are having two different conversations. Same thing as the argument with racism. And it all comes down to, and when you're dealing with these intellectuals, you got to catch them in their verbal sleights of hand. That's what they're very good at, verbal sleight of hand. And then when they catch you off balance in a verbal sleight of hand, then they just talk circles around you, and then they declare victory before you have a chance to even figure out what happened. They're very good at it. Most of them are really good at a whole lot of this. And again, the reason why they don't like dealing with people like me, because they can't beat me at this. Anyway, the point is, most of the time when you're talking to these intellectuals, you got to catch them in the definitions. You catch them in the definitions, then it stops them in their tracks. So the whole argument with racism is that there are 4 or 5 definitions of racism if you look it up in the dictionary. If you can't agree with someone on the definition of the term, then you can't have a conversation about the subject. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that civilized society is based on communication. The reason humans can dominate the animal kingdom is not because we're the biggest, strongest, and the fastest. I was at the zoo the other day. Tigers, lions, alligators, bears, they're all bigger, stronger, faster than us. Why do we dominate them? Because we can communicate in ways that they can't. We can consider the future that they can't. We can rationalize and think about things that we can't see in front of us in ways that they cannot. That's why we can dominate people who are not people, but entities that are stronger than us. Human beings, the thing that allows us to dominate the way that we do is our ability to communicate. Our ability to communicate is based on our acceptance of languages. Our acceptance of languages is based on we accept that these are the words of the language. These are the letters of the language. Here's how sentences get put together. And here's what a word means. So if I say that tree over there, all of you understand what I mean. All of you understand and can picture in your mind a tree. If I say that's a tree and I point to it, we're all on the same page. But if I start pointing at a car and saying tree, 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 and we can't agree what's a car and what's a tree, we can't communicate. And then everything falls apart. And the reason why a lot of these quote unquote debates that you see on YouTube are it's nonsense, is because they can't even agree on what a word means. They're having two different conversations at the same time, but arguing with each other. And it's entertaining. And somebody gets a slam dunk and then a little clip goes on social media. But is anybody actually learning anything? Not really. Does the main person learn anything? No, they declare victory when they're done. Do the 20 participants learn anything? For the most part, no. Maybe 10% of them might walk away and say, I got something out of that because they came there not really trying to be combative. But really, it's entertaining. That's really what it is. These kind of debates these days, because sometimes people in my comments say, Dre, why don't you debate with somebody in one of your live streams? Debate with them for what? All that's going to happen in the debate is I'm going to make my point. They're going to make their point. It's going to become probably just a verbal jousting of who can land the best slam dunk, not who's actually making a point and learning anything. The only way you can have a real debate with real learning is you got to have two logical, rational people who are not emotionally bought into a certain position and are open to sharing their positions and also open to hearing what the other person has to say, to where there's an actual intellectual exchange. Now, you find me two people who fit that description, and there's a useful debate. The problem with that debate is that it's not going to go viral on social media because there are no slam dunk moments. Y'all get the catch-22 here? The only ones that y'all even find out about are when somebody's slam dunking on somebody else, which is not a debate. That's an argument. Those are not the same thing. If somebody's trying to win, you're arguing. A debate can be just an exchange of ideas. Here's my idea. Here's your idea. Here's mine is better. Here's why yours is better. And we can give and take. If there's a real debate, there's a give and take, meaning that's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, I see what you're saying. I disagree with that, but here's why. That's a debate. What you've seen on these YouTube videos are arguments. They're just rapid fire arguing. And again, it's entertaining, but is it educational? No, it's not. It's educational if you want to learn how to point out logical fallacies and how people use verbal sleight of hand. If you are good at catching it, then it's educational in that way. So I could watch one of those. I could just pause the video every 30 seconds and point out the logical fallacies. If you want to learn that way, I can do that. But you're not actually learning anything by listening to these people. So anyway, as I was saying, this ideological overreach, DEI, people define this phrase in different ways. And this is why it's hard to have a conversation about it. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. These three words, are they necessarily bad things? No, they're not. Diversity means you have a mix. That's great. What's wrong with having a mix? Diversity is a good thing. You need biological and ecological diversity in certain environments so certain animals and people can thrive. The United States, the planet Earth has the type of diversity that allows human life to exist. The sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth. If it was a few million miles closer, it would be too hot and we would all melt. If it was a few miles away, then it'd be too cold and we would all die. The diversity of the space that we have here, even when the Earth turns completely away from us and we're at nighttime or we're furthest away from the sun and we're in winter, we can still survive because it's not too cold and it doesn't get too hot in the summertime. We need the diversity. Diversity is a good thing. Having a mix of ideas, a mix of people, a mix of different inputs is a positive thing. Equity. Is that necessarily a bad thing or a good thing? No, it's a neutral thing the way that you look at it. Equity is allegedly about making sure everyone gets treated fairly. Everyone has a similar starting line. So if someone started further ahead than others, then we got to fix that in some way so that it balances out. In theory, that sounds like a good idea. Inclusion. Giving everybody an opportunity to get in the room, give everybody a chance to get a seat at the table so that everyone has a chance to succeed, even if they don't take advantage of that chance to succeed. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Are these necessarily on their surface? If you give colloquial definitions of the terms, are these necessarily bad things? I would have to say, no, they're not. The problem is when we say DEI, the way it has been implemented, is that how it works? The answer is hell no. The way diversity, equity, and inclusion actually works is we want diversity of genders, colors, and sexual orientations in our company. So since our company is a bunch of men or a bunch of heterosexual people, we got to bring in a bunch of women or a bunch of black people or a bunch of gay people just to say we have diversity, a diverse mix of these things. What does that have to do with the performance of the company? The answer is absolutely nothing. But if you ask somebody who's a DEI supporter, they'll say, well, when you bring in different people from different backgrounds, you get different mixes and different skills, et cetera, et cetera. No, you can get different skills, a bunch of heterosexual white men. You got one who's a programmer. You got one who's a coder. You have one who's a CEO. You got one who can manage the money. You got one who's a salesperson. You got one who's a marketer. You got one who can write copy. They could all be white men, heterosexual and straight. That's diversity too. Because when you run the business, you need diversity of skill, not diversity of identity. But DEI, when they say diversity, what do they mean? They mean diversity of identity. Is that necessary? No, it's not necessary. You need diversity of skills in a business, not diversity of people. So the second one, equity. Equity is around this concept that everyone should get the same, either a similar outcome or a similar starting point. Depending on who you ask, they will move the goalposts on you. So be careful with this equity term. Mr. Ibram X. Kendi, he's another black intellectual who has me blocked on social media. I've never talked to this man. He wrote a book called How to Be Anti-Racist. Y'all should read the book. Very interesting book. There's a lot of white people bought into the concepts in that book, interestingly enough. And Mr. Kendi says that any institution that produces outcomes that are not equal amongst races is by definition a racist organization. He says that in his book. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. That's a completely ridiculous argument. That any institution where the outcomes are not the same. In other words, if white people and black people do not get the same outcomes, that means the institution is racist. So if more white people are graduating from one college than black people, percentage basis, then that means the institution is racist and changes must be made to fix that inequity, that inequality, that racism. This is literally what this man says. And that book probably sold a couple million copies. Who was buying it? Ain't that many black people buying books. Y'all get what I'm saying? So that book was very effective. That's why I said race hustling. I knock the concept. I'm not knocking the business. The business of race hustling is a well-paying business if you got in when it mattered. Mr. Kendi got in when it mattered. Now, today might be a little late, but I get my point. This whole concept of equity, everyone achieving the same outcome is nonsense. Life is not equitable. Life is unfair and imbalanced by definition. In Florida, we get tropical storms. Ain't no tropical storms in Minnesota. Up there, they get snow. We don't get snow down here. Everything is not equitable. Everything is not balanced out in that way that everybody gets the same things. That's not the way that it works. And some say, well, what if your parents started somewhere that other people didn't start? What if you started on third base, but I got to start outside of the stadium? I say, yeah, that's true. That happens. And I say, and now it's your job to do something about it. Booker T. Washington wrote a whole book called Up From Slavery. Booker T. Washington was a black man, slave, got out of slavery, and he worked his way up into being a somebody. His whole thing is to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And a lot of black people don't like this concept. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. What it simply means, those of you familiar with the term bootstrapping, you hear entrepreneurs talk about that. Bootstrapping is when you start a business and you don't take money from a lender or an investor, and you just do it off your own money or just off your own hard work from zero, and you just work your way up into being something so where nobody else owns any of your business because you built it all up yourself. You're independently owned. Nobody owns you, and you don't owe any investors or creditors any money back. That's called bootstrapping, building it from scratch, from the dirt, from zero. And Booker T. Washington is one of the most famous black people noted for espousing this concept. And there are a lot of black people who don't like the concept of building yourself up by the bootstraps. Here's the reason why I would theorize some black people don't like the concept, because they don't want to do the work. Bottom line, there's a lot of black people who just don't want to do the work. So they don't want to hear anybody telling you do the work, because that will require you to actually do something. Whereas if you can blame the government and say the government's responsible for your position, then you don't have to do anything. You just got to sit there and wait for the government to do something for you. Here's the problem. We've been being told for the last 60 years that we just need to sit and wait for the government to do something for us. Has it happened? If it did, I didn't see it. I missed that movie. All right. What's the name of it? I didn't see it. So this whole thing sounds really good, but it doesn't actually work, of waiting for the government to do something for you. It has not happened. So, and then the last one is inclusion. All right, bringing everybody into the room. This is the easiest one to knock down. It's the most pernicious, but is the most nonsense. The value of a space, folks, is the fact that not everybody can be in the space. The example I use all the time. When you were in college, who were the most popular groups? All the teams. All the teams, the frats and the sororities, all the sports teams, and any team that you had to earn your way into. The dance team, the cheerleaders, the basketball team, the football team, the soccer team, the golf team, the fraternities, the sororities. Why were they the most popular groups? Not because the people in them were just great people, because you don't know who they are. This could be any college. The reason why they were the most popular groups is because the groups were exclusive by definition. By design, they were exclusive, meaning you had to earn your way onto the football team. You got to earn your way onto the cheerleading squad. You had to earn your way into a sorority. You had to be chosen to be in a fraternity. And because they're exclusive and not everybody can be in them, they are more valuable because you can't just walk in. You got to earn your way in. So when you say inclusion, we just want to include more people in a space. As soon as you make a space more inclusive, you lower the value of that space. Why? Because you lowered the standard to get in. So if the standard is you got to be this good to get in, now we're going to lower the standard to here so we can have more inclusion. The value of that room just went down. And the highest level people you have there are no longer valued the same way because you don't have to be high value to get in. They're going to find their way out. The concept, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you raise the bar of anything, when you raise standards of anything, you eliminate losers. You eliminate low-level performers. Anytime you raise the standard, low-level performers have to leave because they can't meet the standard. So they got to go. Anytime you lower standards, the high-level performers leave because the very thing that made this room worth it is no longer there. It doesn't exist anymore. They're going to go somewhere else where high-level performance is valued. If you lower a standard, then high-level performance is not valued. I'm leaving. I want to be somewhere where being high-level matters. If you lower standards, then being high-level doesn't matter anymore. Okay, I'm going to go somewhere where it does matter. Y'all want to see an example of this? Remember what happened in Butler, PA last summer? The attempt on then former, but now active President Donald Trump's wife. And people were saying, who are these FBI people these Secret Service people, that they got with Donald Trump? Clearly, some standards have been lowered here. Everybody remember that? Some standards have been lowered here. All right, they tried to be more inclusive. And look at that. They almost got this man killed because the standards were not being upheld the way that they had been before. The reason why people go for the concepts like inclusion is because inclusion allows more people an opportunity. It gives more people a chance to succeed, quote unquote, succeed. That's what inclusion does. I understand that. And I agree that that's what it does. I don't agree that it gets implemented. I don't agree with this. I come from the professional sports world. In the sports world, you had to be good to play. If you lower the standard of what it takes to be a professional athlete, then being a professional athlete loses its value. That's the reason why it's valuable, is because you can't just walk in. You got to do something. 99% of people who pick up a ball never play a sport professionally. That's why those who actually make it professionally, they always put it on their resume. Why? Because not everybody can do it. If anybody could do it, then it wouldn't matter. If playing at LA Fitness made you a professional athlete, then being a professional athlete wouldn't matter anymore, because anybody can go to LA Fitness and play ball. Y'all get it? It's the same thing with any other group where you have to earn your way in. So this whole concept of inclusion is nonsense. So when people talk about DEI, let's say somebody like me starts breaking it down and saying the things that I'm saying, what the race hustle would try to say is, well, DEI is about giving more opportunity to these type of people and those type of people, et cetera, so that because traditionally it's been given all the opportunity to white people and black people were excluded and weren't allowed in. And the conversation will come down to one fundamental difference. And this is the fundamental difference between me and the race hustlers. There's only one fundamental difference. It's two different worldviews. Worldview A is bad things have been done to black people. Therefore, somebody has to pay us back and make it right so that it's more of a quote unquote level playing field. That's worldview A. That's the race hustler's worldview. Worldview B is the worldview of, I agree that bad things have been done. I agree that some black people have had to start behind the eight ball. I agree that as a whole, white people have had a head start on black people in America. I agree with all of that. At the same time, even with all of that being said, I'd rather be left alone and let me work my way up, even from this disadvantaged position, and I'm going to win anyway. That's worldview B. That's my worldview. My worldview is you build it up from where you came. You start where you're at. You grow where you are planted. I remember I worked at this gym called Bally Total Fitness. Y'all remember that gym? I worked at Bally Total Fitness, and last year I was working there. Well, the year I worked there, it was like 2005. And I remember the regional manager, he came to our gym one day, and this is a straight sales job, straight sales, like gong over the head sales job. You do bad in sales one month, you might not be the manager the next month. That kind of place. High pressure sales internally, not on the customers. And the regional manager came in and he gave all of us this sheet of paper, and it had like these 8 motivational statements on it. I don't remember most of them, but it was one of them that said, bloom where you are planted. And the reason he gave that out is because when you work at a gym like that, there are several locations, and some locations are more popping than other locations. In other words, some locations, there's always new customers coming in. So it's easier to make sales simply because there are more prospects walking in the door. For example, if you work at a brand new gym, any of you ever worked at a gym that was brand new, it just opened, it's customers just coming in. All you got to do is just close them. All you got to do is just sell them. You ain't got to close them. They're already closed. You know they're going to sign up. All you got to do is just get them to sign the paperwork. It's easy because it's new customers just walking in. Whereas if you work in an established gym that's been there for 20 years, it's much harder to make sales because the amount of customers coming in is fewer and further between. So the fewer opportunities you get, you got to actually be good and sell them because you don't have as many opportunities to make sales. So I remember I worked at 3 locations. I worked at one in Cheltenham, right outside of Philly. I worked at Willow Grove, and I worked in one in South Philly. And the one at Cheltenham was the newest gym, so it was always new customers coming in. And I was killing it in sales. I was making a whole lot of sales. Then because I was doing so well, I got moved to the Willow Grove location as an assistant manager. There were much fewer salespeople. That gym had been sitting there for 30 years, and the prospects were much fewer. But I was a good salesperson, so I would close those people, and your commissions were higher at smaller places. The whole point being, the reason the regional manager said that is because he knew that a lot of us, or not us, but the other locations, they would bitch about not working at our location at Cheltenham because we had all these customers coming in, and these other locations didn't have customers coming in like us. So they'd be like, hey, regional manager, if I worked at that gym, I'd be making a lot of sales too. And they were right. They weren't wrong. If you work at a location that's new, you're going to make a lot of sales because there's all these customers. But if you're not there, you can't just sit there and say, well, hey, I'm broke and my commission check's $100. But, if I was working at that gym, my commission check would be $2,000. Maybe you're right, but you ain't working there. So what you going to do? Just sit there with your $100 and do nothing? See, that's worldview A. I'm about worldview B. All right, put me in the trashy location. Okay, I got to get this money because I got bills to pay. All right, so whatever I got to do it. Put me in a bad situation. I still had to work my way out of it. That's pull yourself up by the bootstraps. That's Booker T. Washington's approach. And that's the approach that a lot of Black America had up until about the 1960s when the government said, wait, black people, stop trying to build yourself up by the bootstraps. Let us help you. We see how that turned out. We got 60 years of data. We see how that turned out. As soon as black people said, oh, I ain't got to build myself up, but pull myself up by the bootstraps anymore. The government's going to help me. Okay, let me stop working. Let's stop building families. Let's kick the dads out of the house and take this welfare check. Let's wait for the government to do it for us. And for the last 60 years, we've been going backwards. Moving forward, but going backward at the same time. Because people lost the mentality, is the mentality that I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about specifically data and things you can count. I am, but I'm not. So civil rights groups like BLM, which do they even exist anymore? They frame this as an erasure, urging preservation of hard-won historical lessons as essential to progress. Nonsense. I already addressed that. Proponents say that this is not censorship, but a rebalancing, refocusing exhibits on American exceptionalism and removing division. This is what I agree with. That's what this actually is. It's a rebalancing. A historical museum should not only be pointing out negatives at a country that is still the leader in the world. Everybody wants to come here. Everybody looks to us as an example. How do we have a museum that's only focused on negativity and negative things that happened in our past? It's not that they didn't happen, but if you want to balance out America, you had to paint a picture of America to some aliens coming from another planet who knew nothing about the United States of America. 80% of that story has to be positive, at least 80%. Because how do we get here if it's not? It doesn't make any sense. It can't be 50-50. 80% of it got to be positive. How did America become America if 80% of our story is negative? It wouldn't be America. It would be another country. So opponents say that terms like unifying and ideologically driven language are vague. This could lead to censorship, unnecessary historical critique, and complexity. I say they're right. And is that going to happen? Probably. Probably. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that happening. All that said, everybody, I talked a lot here today. Let's get to the comments. I think I need to take a bathroom break before I do this. Let me read a couple comments off YouTube from Chili Shop Ordibus. He said, the world is unbalanced, not in the way of few billionaires versus 1 billion of beggars. Okay, such an imbalance should be challenged. It can be challenged. Go ahead, challenge it. All right, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with challenging the imbalance. Oh, Chili left a bunch of comments. He said, has similar adventures when presented my own model in physics. Instead, the discussion I had a concrete wall and force with metal. Yeah, I get what you're saying. When you try to challenge, yes, you're correct. Chili Shot, I get what you're saying. You're 100% correct. They use their position in money as an argument. So if you got no money, no power, according to them, you have no argument. That happens in certain spaces. That is correct. You are correct. I get what you're saying there. Chili Shot over there on YouTube. So let me see what I got there. I got a couple comments on Instagram. Then we're going to come to y'all on TikTok. I am going to take a restroom break. Let me read these couple comments on Instagram. Then I'm going to come to y'all on TikTok. TikTok is usually the most comments. Please keep liking the live, y'all. We're at 75,000. Let's get to 100K. B. Miller said, you are a professor? No, I'm not a professor. The example was if I was. I was talking about if I was a professor. B. Miller said, do you have any business book recommendations or books that help with public speaking? Well, those are two different questions you're asking. I would say my book, Work on Your Game, what you see right there, you can get it at workonyourgamebook.com. I would love to become a real estate coach. You should become a real estate coach. B. Miller said, you're accurate with the low-level standards. Southwest Airlines lowered the standards to become an employee. No diploma required. And, man, the service has changed since COVID. I believe you. I don't fly Southwest, but I believe you're telling the truth. Any company that lowers standards, the performance is going to go down. That's just a guarantee. That's just a scientific law. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me run to the restroom real quick so I have enough time that I can get through all these comments. Give me 90 seconds. I'm going to run to the restroom. Then we're going to get the comments starting with y'all on TikTok. Like the live. Let's get to 80,000 likes by the time I come back. Be right back. Here we go. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around during that 90-second intermission. So if you got a question or comment, I'm starting with the oldest ones that I can see. By the way, TikTok, I cannot see every comment because of the scrolling of the comments on TikTok. So Garrett Sayer Golf said Penn State Altoona. Is that where you from? Penn State Altoona? Shout out to Penn State Altoona. Scrap said Donald Trump is a disaster. Okay. You were entitled to your opinion. Let me get my soundboard ready because I know I'm going to need it today. All right, so I got my soundboard ready. And y'all will hear the sound soon. I don't have to go over them again. Southern Pride said, everything I disagree with is racist. Liberal guide to politics. Or if you're white, then you're right about that. Garrett Sayer Golf said, you're against Juneteenth too, right? Here we go. Garrett Sayer Golf.
Strawberry cheesecake.
First Straw Man of the Day award, Garrett Saylor Golf. I didn't even mention Juneteenth. And how can I be against a holiday that exists? How can you be against a day? Juneteenth is a day that actually a lot of people don't notice. Juneteenth I knew about when I was in elementary school. I got taught about that when I was in elementary school. A lot of people only found out about the very concept of Juneteenth in like 2020 when the government, it might have been 2021, when Joe Biden's government, his administration decided to make it a national holiday. But Juneteenth has always been known about since back in the days of slavery. There's a lot of black and white people didn't know that it existed. So nice straw man there, Garrett Saylor. Scrap said Confederates shouldn't be celebrated as disrespectful to blacks. You're entitled to that opinion, Scrap. Here's what I say. I don't see too many Confederate anything. I guess you're referring to like the flags or like Confederate generals and things like that. I understand, and I don't know if you're black or not, but it doesn't even matter if you're black. If you think it's disrespectful to blacks, that's fine. At the same time, it shouldn't be celebrated. I would say it can be celebrated simply because even if you think everything Confederacy is racist, that doesn't mean that somebody can't go with it. People are allowed to be racist. The First Amendment of our Constitution protects free speech rights. And one of the free speech rights you have in America is that if you want to go against another group just on the basis of their race or skin color, you are allowed to do that. It doesn't seem like it, but you are. First Amendment protects free speech. And if you want to be a celebrator of the Confederacy or whatever you believe it means to you, you have a right to that. I say that even as a black man living in the United States of America. If someone wants to fly a Confederate flag, so what? Fly the flag. I'm not personally offended by your Confederate flag. And if I was, then I would need to seek therapy. Same way that if I fly a BLM flag, that doesn't mean somebody else should be offended by that. Now, some people may say, well, that's not the same thing. I say, okay. Again, with the Confederacy, you have a right to celebrate it if that's what you want to do. That's what I would say. Nightwalk said, I think you're overgeneralizing. I don't know what point you're referring to, Nightwalk, but you may be right that I may be overgeneralizing. But anytime I'm talking about a topic and I have a limited amount of time, which I do, and I have to generalize. I think you still get the general point that I'm making, whatever subject you're referring to. If you don't, then tell me what you missed, and I'll reiterate it for you. Nurse Givia said he's not removing history. He wants the whole truth told, not one-sided biased BS. I generally agree with that. I might have to find a shorter clap. That one's a little bit long. Move Makers said Trump is not educated, and you're definitely not using your education that you earned.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Strawberry cheesecake.
So Move Makers, you get the straw man of the day. This is also a ad hominem here. Trump is definitely not educated. Well, according to how educated is defined in the United States of America, colloquially, he went to college, so he is educated. Usually educated means you went to college. Donald Trump went to college, so he is educated. What you're saying is you don't agree with his position, so you're trying to attack his intellect by saying that he's not educated, and that's why you got the
strawberry cheesecake.
And you say, I'm not using my education simply because, based on the context of your comment, you're saying I'm not using my education simply because you disagree with my position and because I'm not bashing Trump the way that you would like to bash Trump, which is why you got
strawberry cheesecake.
RDJ said history are trends that predict the future. Okay, let's just say that that's true, RDJ. Which history are we talking? Because you can pick and choose which parts of history you want to use as a predictor of the future. And you can leave out the parts that you don't want to use. So your argument sounds smart, but it actually doesn't make any sense because history, you can pick and choose which piece of information to use and what not to use. Scrap said he's attacking your people and supporting it. Not really. Who are my people, first of all, Scrap? And what am I supporting? So you got to come with something better than that. RDJ said false history equals false conclusions. Okay, RDJ, who is the arbiter that says this is absolutely true from history and this is absolutely not true? Who's the judge that gets to tell us what to agree with and what to not agree with from history? Because if that judge exists, I don't know who they are. Douglas said, what do you propose we do? Who is we? And what we do about what? Scrap said, why don't you let people speak on your life? Well, you kind of answered your own question because it's my life. I make the rules. I'm an entrepreneur, Scrap. So I come from the world of making your own rules. And my rule is nobody else is speaking on my life. So that's it. There is no why. Why is not in your repertoire. Nightwalk said, one of the most powerful men in the world and one of the richest men in the world sit together. And Karina said they also do it to give people the illusion that he is dismissing the law when in fact he is not. Well, they've been trying that for 10 years. I mean, they've been trying it and it works on people because all it does is reiterate what they already believe. Movemaker tried another straw man, but I can't give you another award. So you got to come with something better moving forward. Nightwalk says, surely you realize Trump is just a tool. Look behind him, see the machine. Well, a lot of people say that about the government in general. I get your position. But Heck said, wow, the insults start flying when people can't refute the argument. Well, yeah, I told y'all. See, yesterday when I was doing this, I didn't get to use my soundboard too often because there weren't too many fallacies as we were talking about a less emotionalized topic. But I told y'all yesterday that if you come back today, if I talked about Trump, y'all were going to get to see me use my soundboard. So I'm going to get to use my soundboard a lot today. We're just getting started. All right, don't worry, folks. Y'all going to hear those sounds a lot here today. Just keep watching. Little Al, thanks for the follow. Nurse Giba said, truth, well said. Thank you. RDJ said, you're on point. Thank you. Scrap said, so you don't think slavery should be told? All right, Scrap, I'm going to give you one more. Strawberry cheesecake. Scrap, you're the same person that said, why not let people talk on my life? Well, it damn sure wouldn't be you if this is the best that you can come up with. I don't think slavery should be told. Really? Did I say that? So the logical fallacy of the straw man, folks, this is the one that I use the strawberry cheesecake. If I play that, that's a straw man. And this is the one you're going to hear most often. A straw man is when someone takes your position or what they claim to be your position or they're proposing to be your position. Then they rephrase it into their version of what you said. Then they pose it back to you in the form of incredulity, ridicule, sarcasm, or a question, as if they're using your own words against you. Like Scrap said here, so you don't think slavery should be told. Did I say that? I did not say that. And usually a straw man, one tell for the straw man is so basically, so you think, so you believe, so you're saying. Anytime somebody starts it with that word so, and then they bring it into allegedly saying what you said, that's often a tell for the straw man. So all of you, be careful that you don't do this to other people because that's a straw man. It's often, almost every time somebody starts their sentence like that, they're about to use a straw man. Nurse said, Trump is highly educated on history. I would put him up against anyone. Okay. I don't know who else is educated on history, so I don't know who I would put him up against. I say history is a story, so everybody can pick and choose whatever parts they want to go with. Patty Ingram, good morning. American, thank you for the rose. Southern Pride said, it's simply manipulation wrapped in a blanket of misinformation for intellectually challenged people. What are you referring to? Servando Guerrero said, African-American servicemen and women being removed from military history websites with a question mark. What are you referring to? That's not the topic here today. I think I know what you're talking about, but that's not the topic. So that's a red herring. Red herring is when someone brings up a point that takes you off the actual topic to talk about what they want to talk about. And you're fine to leave that comment, but we're not addressing it because it's not the topic. Carla, Indiana, good morning. She said, historians have people thinking Juneteenth is celebrating the end of slavery, and that's a lie. Well, see, there you go. Juneteenth has always existed. It's existed since the days of slavery. Well, since slavery ended, and most people didn't even find out about it until 4 years ago. But then they want to get on here and argue about history. Nightwalk said, many times people will attempt to delegitimize facts by overwhelming the thought process. Nightwalk, that's true. At the same time, facts don't matter nearly as much as they used to. Generally, facts don't matter at all because there's always new facts. There's always counterfacts to every fact. Mlichi said history comes from Greek word, which is Historia, has nothing to do with the pronoun him. Mlichi, really, is that really what you're trying to do here?
Strawberry cheesecake.
So what Mlichi is doing here, I want y'all to notice this. When I said history is a story, I said it's his story, and I broke it down into two words, his story. That's a colloquialism. It's a figure of speech, Mlichi. What Mlichi did is try to break that down literally and say the word history. He's trying to break down not trying to, but did break down the etymology of the word, and it has nothing to do with the pronoun him or his story, which is what I said. That was a colloquialism, which if you don't know what that means, it means I'm breaking it down in a common way that people often use it. His story, history. I'm breaking it down in that way to explain to people that it's literally a story, meaning just because something is history does not mean it's necessarily true. It's a story because people can tell stories that are not true. That's the whole point. I don't know if you understood that or not, but since you said this, I will give you credit and a
Strawberry cheesecake.
And right after that, Mlichi gives a comment that said, this guy is totally grifting. His story is nonsense and literally ignore the etymology. Again, you're trying to break something down literally that I'm using metaphorically.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
So now I'm grifting.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Okay, continuing. Carla said, Juneteenth is when Galveston found out slavery had ended. The 13th Amendment was passed before. That's correct. And there was something there. Hold on, there's one other one I want to get. See if I can find it. One moment. And I got to find some more sounds. I find the right sounds for some of these logical fallacies that y'all keep using. So this is the literalist. What you just did, what I was saying, was the literalist version of a straw man. Is when you take a metaphorical point and you address it literally as if that's what I meant. Like, really? So anyway. Sean said, you don't live in the same reality or share the same values. As who or what? What are you referring to? And Sean, I've read this earlier. His point was debating something with you. Well, Sean, we're not debating. You're leaving comments and I'm talking. This is not a debate. Daniel says Starbucks of liberal arts degree. Okay. Courtney said cosign. Bama Girl said I'm an advisor at a university. All right. Fair enough. Kudo said I have no filter. Good. If you have no filter, you probably shouldn't take employment because you're eventually going to say the wrong thing. Kudo, good morning. Southern Pride said much easier nowadays. Just push a far left ideology and you're hired at certain places. Not everybody. Davey said if you're in academia, you love learning, philosophy, poetry, etc. I would have to question that frame, Davey. I don't think that's true. I think people get in academia for the same way people get into the legal profession, for the prestige, for the paycheck, and for at least what they think is going to be the lifestyle. I think that's why people get in academia, not because they love learning. Why you got to get a job in academia to love learning? You could go to the library and learn. What do you need to get a job in academia for? Yes, Julia Roberts. That's who I was talking about. Kudo said, Matt Damon. Okay. Yeah, work for yourself. That's right. I Bake Magic said, very true. Most people are under NDAs and don't even know it. No, interesting. Carl said, if you really want to call yourself educated, you have to seek out all sides. That's right. Well, Heck said, people don't like to see information that disagrees with their point of view, especially if their point of view is based in emotion. Now, if it's based in logic, they're open to it. But when it's based in emotion, they don't want to hear it. Crespo Realty on Instagram said, I missed a lot. What's your thought on restitution for slavery family members? My thought is that if it is achieved, I'll take the money. But I'm not going to DC to argue for it because I don't think it's going to happen. I'm betting against it ever happening. But if it does happen, I want my money. So that's my position. Southern Pride said, we no longer have a single truth and it's become a reality that we are doomed. I don't think that means we're doomed. I think we're more doomed when the sun burns out. But as far as not having a single truth, that is true. We don't have a single truth. Connie, thank you for the follow. BLM, Southern Pride said, BLM and Antifa are terrorist organizations that should be designated as such, said what I said. Well, BLM's kind of over. There is no BLM anymore. That woman went and bought a couple houses with the money that got donated They donated the rest to the LGBTQ community, and that was it. And Antifa, I don't know what they're doing. But watch Candace Owens' documentary on BLM. She broke it all down, and she went and got the paperwork on them because they were a 501c3, so all their paperwork is public. High class white trash says, funny when race hustlers use the word accountability. Well, it's part of their tools, one of their weapons. Carl says, spreading lies, we want unity, they're going to put y'all back in chains. Yeah, people use that a lot. Linda B, 2165 said, you are spot on. They make a lot of money race hustling. Well, they did. It's drying up right now. But they had a good little run. There was a good little run they had. Kelly Taxis said, you can't just pretend that history didn't happen. Well, what history, Kelly?
Strawberry cheesecake.
Nobody said the history didn't happen. My point today has been there's a lot of history, and you can't put all of history in the museum. The museum is not big enough to hold all of history. You can't tell all the story. You got to pick and choose which parts you want to use. That's the issue that Trump is espousing. He didn't say it in so many words. I'm saying it. Is that he's saying they're picking the negative parts of history. Why don't we use more positive parts of history? That's a fair point. And with America being America, I agree with him, because how did America become such a great place if all of our history is so negative, according to the Smithsonian? That's a very logical argument that he didn't say it in so many words, but that's what he's pointing to. Carl said, all the people responsible for slavery are dead. I agree. And the people who were slaves. Sherry said, I don't see or hear any healing happening. Well, that's the frame that they use, Sherry. That's not what they're actually trying to do. They just use the frame because it gives them deniability. Kamala said no to reparations. She was running for president. Yeah, she did say that. She did. Carol says, saw you on $1 Million Moment. Great interview. Was I on $1 Million Moment? Oh, the podcast you're talking about. Thank you. Who's the host of that show? Karen Bishop said, you would have actually tracked down your family to really have ancestors of slaves. So there's ways to do that. I've seen people on TV doing it. I don't know what the government would do in that case. I think they might just give a check to everybody. That'd probably be easier if they did it. Wizzle said the government would not pay out money in reparations. I tend to agree with you. They're probably not. Well, Heck said money doesn't fall from the sky. Cash reparations means you take it from someone else. Yeah, the money has to come from somewhere, which is something that most people haven't quite given an answer to yet. Southern Pride, thank you for the share. TikTok Ref, welcome. Carl said, it would be hard to find someone who's not emotionally attached to an idea. Well, it depends on the idea. I'm attached to ideas logically, but not emotionally. Abraham said, verbal sleight of hand is so tough. Yes, it's a common thing you'll see. And go into the academic space, you'll find people who are experts at the verbal sleight of hand. Southern Pride said, wait, I heard the earth is flat and was told that's the truth. I'm so confused. Well, here's how you figure it out. Just start walking and see if you fall off the edge. Then it'll prove it. Now, Storm and Bub said Trump is going to start getting rid of black people. Yeah, they said that in 2015, Storm. When is he going to start? When is this starting actually happen? Cheyenne Smith said, I disagree with that. Okay, what are you disagreeing with? If you disagree with something I said, just say your disagreement. If you say you disagree, but then you don't say why, then I don't know. I don't have a response for you. Finn said diversity of perspective is healthy as well. Yes, you get diversity of perspective. You can get diversity of perspective from a bunch of white heterosexual men. Getting diversity of perspective does not mean you got to bring in women just because you have a bunch of men. A bunch of men can have a diversity of perspective with just men in the room. So again, the brochure thing of DEI is we need diversity of perspective. Okay, great. And the way that they have executed it is let's bring in black people, women, and LGBTQ to get diversity of perspective. Just because people are different colors does not mean they have different perspectives. If you got a bunch of men, women, black, white, young, old, straight, and gay all in a room, and they're all liberals, do you have diversity of perspective? The answer is no, you don't. You have a homogeneity of perspective. They all think the same way. They just look different. So diversity of perspective is about the way you think, not the way that you look. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is about looking different and having a different identity, i.e. your sexuality. But you can have the same ideas as everybody else in the room. So that's not diversity. Their diversity is based on what it looks like, not what's actually happening. And everybody knows that that's true. But what happens is the defenders of it, they try to use the verbal sleight of hand and they try to defend it with one thing while they're actually doing another thing. That's a logical fallacy called the Mott and Bailey. The Mott and Bailey is when you're doing one thing, and then when someone calls you out on the thing that you're doing, you defend it with something that makes it sound innocent. I.e., let's bring in a bunch of women and gay people and black people into this organization. And I say, why are you bringing in people of different identities just to prove that you brought in different identities? And you say, no, we got to have diversity of thought. Well, again, if you argue it and we break it down to the essence of what you're actually doing, it's clear that it's nonsense. Kelly said, completely disagree with your diversity definition. Well, we don't have to disagree on a definition. We can look it up in the dictionary. So there's nothing to disagree with. PMP said, diversity is not one's a programmer and one's in sales. Ha ha.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
So there is the appeal to ridicule. The ha ha made it appeal to ridicule. And PMP, yes, it is. Diversity means that you have people of different skill sets inside of a business, which is when I use that example. If you're running a business, you may need a programmer, you need a salesperson, you need a marketer, you need a CEO, you need a mailman, you need a maintenance man, you need a hostess, you need somebody at the front desk. You have different types of people. So yes, it is an example of diversity to have different people with different skill sets. So PMP, what exactly are you saying here? It doesn't make any sense. Southern Pride said, it's called being lazy and we as a society have society for this mindset. Okay, fair enough. Southern Pride, oh, the one we couldn't holster their firearm, I remember. Finn said, are we saying that assassination attempt was real? Well, unless you can prove it as false. If you can prove that it wasn't real, then okay, show us. Otherwise, I think we got to go off of what we know. Kelly said, just because you open a position to others than just white doesn't mean the standard is lower. That's not what I said.
Strawberry cheesecake.
So again, you all notice the logical fallacy of the straw man comes out when people hear something that they disagree with, and they rephrase what you said to make it sound dumber so it's easier for them to argue against. Kelly, that is not what I said. I said when you lower the bar, you lose higher level people. When you lower a bar in order to bring more people in. If you say we want to be more inclusive, that means somehow, some way, the standard that you have is not inclusive enough. That's the reason why you need inclusion. An organization that already has enough people or enough diversity or whatever, they don't need to be inclusive. They're already inclusive according to them. If they say we got to be more inclusive, what does that mean? We can't keep the same standard because based on this standard, this is what we got, the people who are already here. So to be more inclusive, we somehow, some way have to change or alter our standards that will allow more people to qualify. That automatically means the standard must be lowered. That is a scientific law known as entropy. When you lower standards, you get more chaos, and you have to lower a standard in order to include more people. It's like the basketball team said, we're not inclusive enough. So instead of having 12 people on the team, we're going to have 30. All right, you have to lower the standard to make sure 30 people can be on the team. Because before, to the basketball team, we only needed 12. Now we need 30. You have to lower the standard because you get a bunch of people who weren't good enough to make the team when there was only 12. Now they're good enough to make the team because it's 30. That is by definition a lowering of standards. So if I got that wrong, please tell me what I got wrong. Chelsea said, like a video game, you have to level up to be prepared for the final level. Yes, that's right. Southern said, I want DEI in the NBA. Yeah, exactly. If you have DEI in the NBA, you got to kick a bunch of black people out to bring white people in. Pele, thanks for the follow. Where was I? Jade Star said, BLM exists in the $1 million mans that they bought for themselves. Yeah, that woman bought a couple houses with that money, gave the rest to the LGBTQ, and she got out of there. Hustled the hell out of a whole bunch of black people. Carol said, Brian Burt. Yeah, shout out to Brian Burt. That was a great interview. I remember talking to Brian, and I can't remember the other guy he had on the call. That was a great interview. Shout out to Brian Burt. I remember that interview. We did that probably about a month ago. It just came out. Joe Byron, good morning. Carlos said, I'd rather see the Confederate flag than the flag of another country in America. Okay, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. I don't see Confederate flags that often, but if I did see one, I wouldn't be bothered by it. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. Free speech. DM said, DEI only creates incompetence. Well, it creates a lot of things. Okay, I'll take that though. User 069 said, nice suit and tie. Thank you. Murphy the Mutt said, I love the sound bites. Me too. The sound bites bring more flavor to these live streams. 404 said, Trump didn't do anything in college. He was a dropout. Well, he probably did something. He probably went to some parties, dated some girls, drank some beer, smoked some weed. He probably did something. 404 said Trump barely finished high school. Okay.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
All right, we get it. You don't like Trump. Y'all come in here with these attacks on Trump. Like, we heard them already. There's nothing you're saying that we haven't heard already. They got to bring something else to the table. Abraham said, I love the intelligence slam dunks. I'm not really trying to slam dunk on people. I'm just responding to things that people are saying. Some of these arguments don't make any sense. Ada, thank you for the follow. Ada said, grew up in Mexican home, dad with no education. Sisters and I are educated, taught to never be offended. There you go. It's mental toughness, personal resiliency. These are kind of things that build a strong nation. You build strong people, you get good times. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Right now, we're going through a challenging time. We have a lot of weak people running things in our society. That is my theory. Dunk says, what's the topic? We're talking about Donald Trump allegedly attacking history by saying that they're going to make some changes to the Smithsonian Museum of History. Southern Pride said, do you feel Trump helped HBCUs? And if so, why doesn't the black community give him credit for it? Well, what did he do? I don't know what he did for HBCUs, but one thing I do know is most HBCUs are not owned by black people. Actually, none of them are. And many HBCUs were started by white people. They're called HBCUs, but they're owned by white people, started by white people. And why doesn't the black community give him credit for it? Well, it depends on who you're referring to when you say the black community. And most black people are afraid to say anything about Trump that is not negative. They're afraid to say anything positive or neutral about Donald Trump because of the backlash they're going to get from their peers. So it doesn't even matter what Donald Trump did. Most black people will not say anything neutral or positive about him in public because of the backlash threat. So that'll answer your question on any subject. I'm Booge said, because nobody pays you to go to the library, people also don't get paid much in academia. Well, upper level academia, yes, you can get a good job and live very well. I'm talking college, university. Yes, you can make a good amount of money. Now, K through 12, that's a different story. Nikki said, history is written by the winners. Yes, exactly, which means they tell you the story that they want you to know. Jay Rocket said, it's not negative, it's facts. Right. And no information is positive or negative. It's just neutral. People tend to look at it as a way. Waterloo said, no payoff for sure in the Trump administration. Well, Waterloo, why you got to get a straw man for that.
Strawberry cheesecake.
Waterloo, you're getting a straw man because people have been talking about reparations when Clinton was president, Democrat. Obama was president, 8 years. Joe Biden with Kamala Harris, 4 years. So where was the payout then? Why are you targeting Trump as if he's the one stopping reparations? He ain't the one. Yoda said, can you help me understand what an association is? What type of association are we talking? I need more context. Trev said, it's about identity to them, never was about differing ideas. Of course it is. And Trev, you understand it. Everybody knows this. DEI is about identity. It's not about actually bringing in diverse thoughts or including, actually, I don't like the equity or the inclusion, but diversity makes sense if it's used the right way. Their diversity is about diversity of identity, but those people can still have the same ideas. Again, you bring in a whole bunch of women, gay people, and black people into an organization, but they're all liberals. You have no diversity. All you got is diversity of color, and you can check a bunch of boxes. That's what you do. Finn said, perspective is gained through experiences. People from different backgrounds have different experience. No, that's a straw man.
Strawberry cheesecake.
That is not necessarily true. If you get a bunch of Latinos and white people and black people and gay people and women and men and young and old, and you put them all through the exact same education in the exact same schools, and they all end up professionals working at the exact same job, what perspectives do they have that are different? Now, I know what I'm using is maybe an extreme example, but it is an example nonetheless that undermines your assertion here. You're saying that people who have different backgrounds have different experience just because their backgrounds are different. Well, it depends on what those backgrounds are that we're referring to, what type of background we're talking. And again, I could come from the hood. You can come from a rich neighborhood. But if we're both liberals and we need diversity of perspective when it comes to politics, is that diversity? Even though we came from two different backgrounds, the answer is no, it's not. So just because we're from different backgrounds does not mean that our perspectives are different. And nor does it mean that we have diversity of thought inside an organization. Lisa says, say it louder to the people in the back. Yeah, I think they heard me. Thank you, Lisa, for the gifts. Join the fan club. Joe Byron, thank you for the rose. Robbie Land said, the NBA lowered their standard during the expansion era. Jordan played against less competition. Well, technically, Robbie Lance, I get what you're saying because they did the expansion, but sometimes technically what you're saying aligns with what I said. But sometimes you have expansion because you have so much concentration of good people that the expansion gives more opportunity to people who are actually good and qualified. So what the NBA did was expand the number of people who will be qualified to play in the NBA because they added, who did they add? They added the Miami Heat, they added the Minnesota Timberwolves, they added the Charlotte Hornets, and I think it was one other team that got added at that time. It's escaping me who it was. But I wouldn't say that Robbie Lance, this directly correlates with lowering their standards. And when you say Jordan played against less competition, I would also challenge that. Now, during the regular seasons, he would have, at some point, he's going to play against some of those lower teams. I think Toronto Raptors, Vancouver Grizzlies, those are also newer teams that came in that era. We're talking late 80s going into the mid 90s. Several new teams came into the NBA. So does that technically lower the standard from what it was to what it became? Technically, Robbie, you're correct. At the same time, Jordan did play against those teams every year. And if those teams were bad, then that might have been a quote-unquote easier win on the schedule, even though these are NBA players. At the same time, Robbie, when they get the playoff time, who makes the playoffs? All the top teams. So Jordan still had to beat all the top teams in the playoffs and in the finals to win his championship. So your argument, I get what you're saying on a technical level, but then when we break it down to a more specific level, you still get
Strawberry cheesecake.
Because in context, what it looks like you're doing here by saying Jordan played against less competition is that you're trying to undermine Michael Jordan's accomplishments by correlating the expansion teams to him not having to be as good in order to win, when that's technically not true. Because in the playoffs, it's still the best teams against the best teams. So he still had to beat the best players to make it. No, it wasn't the Thunder. The Thunder came from the Seattle Supersonics, who were already in existence. It was the Grizzlies, the Raptors. They came in at the same time, the Canada teams. Then it was several years earlier in the late 80s, you got the Minnesota Timberwolves, you got the Charlotte Hornets, you got the Miami Heat. They all came to exist in the late 80s. The Grizzlies and the Raptors came a few years after that. I think that might have been those five. And maybe one more that I'm forgetting. Jay Rocker said, why is he worried about museums at all? This is a relative privation, Jay Rocker.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
That's a relative privation fallacy that you just use. Anytime you use something like, why are you focused on or fixated on or worried about or obsessed with, that's usually someone using the form of the relative privation. That is the fallacy. When someone's talking about one topic and you're trying to get them off of that square, you say, oh, why do you care about that? Why are you talking about that? Why are you even thinking about that? You should be thinking about this. That does not mean that they can't talk about whatever topic they want to talk about. So Donald Trump can probably, quote unquote, worry about 100 different things. He's the damn president of the country. He needs to, quote unquote, worry about a whole lot of things. So just because he's talking in a way that you may disagree with, which it sounds like, you're cloaking your disagreement in this moral high ground fallacy of, oh, he shouldn't be thinking about museums. He should be thinking about more important things. But if he was saying things you agreed with on the museum, you wouldn't be using this frame. And that's why you get the
Strawberry cheesecake.
Southern Pride said many college professors make bank. Being a college professor is a good job. I mean, look how much they're charging the students. Where do you think all that money's going? All right, they're paying the teachers. Teachers get paid pretty good working in colleges. You've been to a college campus? All right, they're nice campuses, aren't they? All right, how do you think they're paying for that? From the money that y'all pay to go there. Stacy said, I know a millionaire that works for the Department of Education, just makes smart investments. All right, fair enough. All right, I'll take a couple more comments, then we'll wrap this up. We'll wrap this up at 10:10, folks. I'll give it 4 more minutes. We're at 100,000 likes. Thank you, everybody, for helping get the likes up. So I'll take a couple more comments here. While I'm waiting, I will tell you all how you can get a couple of my books for free. Get my book, The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. I'll give you this book for free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. Just go to thirddaybook.com. This book is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. All you need to deal with that. Every professional has days when we don't feel like working. You don't feel like taking those calls. You don't feel like responding to emails. You don't feel like doing a sales presentation, but you do it anyway. That's the third day. The book's free. Cover the shipping. Go to thirddaybook.com. book that has been very popular over the last couple of weeks of mine is called The Mirror of Motivation, the self-guide to self-discipline. Discipline is a big thing over here. When I talk about presence, when I talk about command of the room, discipline is one of the main things that gives you that presence. No, most people don't see your discipline. They don't know that you're disciplined, but they can feel it when they feel your presence. This book is about that self-guide to getting it. Go to mirrorofmotivation.com. This book is all about looking in the mirror and asking yourself the right questions so you can be who you need to be, do what you want to do what you need to do to have what you want to have in life. Mirrorofmotivation.com. The book's free. Just cover the shipping. And those of you who are more business focused, I think it was Ben over there on Instagram who was asking this question, or Brian on Instagram asking this question. Sales discipline system. This book is all about using the 8 key disciplines of top salespeople in any industry to say goodbye to up and down months and inconsistent habits. Go to salesdisciplinebook.com. I want you all to notice something here, because I told you what we do here at Work on Your Game is we help people command the room through presence, performance, and discipline. All 3 of these books are based in showing up every day and doing your job the right way. All about, again, this is what we call it, the sales discipline system. This book is the self-guide to self-discipline. This book is all about showing up when you don't feel like showing up, which is also known as discipline. We made a whole system about it. ThirdDayBook.com, mirrorofmotivation.com, salesdisciplinesystem.com. Stewart said the Orlando Magic. Yes, that's the one I was forgetting. Orlando Magic. So those are the teams that came into the league late 80s into the mid 90s. So that was Orlando Magic, Toronto, and Vancouver came in the 90s. But in the late 80s, you had Orlando Magic, you had Minnesota Timberwolves, you had Miami Heat, and Charlotte Hornets. Those are the 4 teams in the late 80s. And then in the mid 90s, or early 90s, early to mid 90s, you got Toronto and Vancouver. So the NBA expanded by 6 teams. That is correct. Thank you, Stuart, for pointing that out. Yes, all my books are on audio. You go to any of those links that I just gave you, and we have the bonus bundle books, bonus bundle option where you get the physical book in the mail. We'll give you the digital book immediately. We'll give you the audio book immediately. And we'll give you some bonus masterclasses around the topic, because I got a lot of masterclasses on these subjects, on sales, on motivation, on showing up all the time. So go to the links that I gave you. If you can't remember the links, go to the link in my profile TikTok. The link in my profile takes you to workonyourgame.live. On that page, we have links to all these books. There's a link to this. There's a link to this one. There's a link to this one, all on that page. Just go to the link in my profile. It's all there. So yes, all of my books are on audio. All my books are in digital. All my books are in physical. We got them in every format. And when they have virtual reality books, all my books will be in virtual reality as well. Stacy said, are the book teachings similar to NLP? No, I'm not an NLP practitioner. So no, my book teachings are not similar to NLP. They're books. So Jade said, I'm thinking Trump wants to bring up the history that they hid in the museum. I think Trump is just trying to draw attention to it and get people stirred up. That's usually what he does when he's controlling the news cycle. XTR said, are you a Mensa member? No, I'm not a Mensa member. So, all right, it's 10:10, everybody. We're going to wrap this one up. I do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. So if you like this one, come back tomorrow, 8 a.m. We might talk about Target. Did y'all hear how Target's numbers are down and people think it's because of the DEI policies? It's not because of the DEI policies, but we might talk about that tomorrow. We might talk about something else. All right, B. Miller, you got it? Brian? All right, got it. And on Instagram, there are links to these books in my profile too. So just go to my profile on Instagram. You'll see the links to the books. And there on YouTube, they should be in the comments, in the the description. On YouTube, these book links are in the description. On Instagram, just go to my profile. We got multiple links. And on TikTok, we got one link. And on that link, it has all the links in there. So tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, topic to be determined. I'm on Instagram at Dre Baldwin. Follow me on Instagram. The replays of all these lives are on my YouTube channel. That link is in my profile. I'm on X at Dre All Day. I'm on LinkedIn, Dre All Day. I'm on YouTube, Dre All Day. Rumble Studio, I believe, is also Dre All Day. So I got Dre All Day on a lot of these platforms except Instagram and TikTok. And he said the CEO is stepping down. Yeah, I heard the CEO is stepping down, but it ain't because of DEI. Target's been down for the last 3 years. DEI thing just happened this year. So it doesn't even make sense if people think this because of DEI. But this is how people get when they get emotional on subjects. We might talk about that tomorrow. We might not. I'll see everybody tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. Everybody have a great Thursday. Thank you to moderators. Thanks to all my regulars who are always in here supporting. I appreciate you all. I see you all. So thank you for being in here. I will see everybody tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. We out of here. Work on your game.